ready to go. It's 5:30. Thank you, everyone, for joining the Board of Selectmen this evening for our second night of budget department head reviews. And we will start this evening with the Parks and Recreation Department. And I see Pam, and Pam, you should feel free to turn your camera on for your department review.
Okay. Hi, Pam.
Hello.
All right, so Parks and Rec budget is a little bit bigger than some of the other budgets that we were reviewing last night. They make up about 4% of the budget. There are 11.5 full-time equivalents in this budget. Take a quick look at their commentary. And don't know why I got new software today, so I don't know why it looks like this, but let's see. So we can see their outlook includes continuing to use the Master Parks Plan to guide improvements to their facilities, pursuing community support for various projects. Here you see a listing of the staffing. The bulk of it is 6 employees in the parks maintenance crew. This is not a change in staffing in this department. Okay. I'm going to start in the administrative part of the budget. In the full-time salary line, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 admin employees, the director, the assistant director, a recreation supervisor, and an office administrator. There's no change in headcount here. Sorry. There really is nothing, no significant change here. The part-time salary that does not reflect any kind of headcount change. It's just they're bringing them to their current wage rates. Do we have any questions on the administrative part of this budget? Okay.
Kate,
Yep.
where did we put the beach security?
Okay, that'll be under beaches,
Got it. Thanks.
which we'll go to next. So this is beach and court facilities. In part-time, these are the paddle hut attendants. If you recall, the paddle hut is, or the Weed Beach is where our paddle courts are located. We have seasonal and temporary employees. Those are primarily the lifeguards. We have about 20 some odd lifeguards every summer, plus a waterfront coordinator and a swim instructor. We have training every year for our the people who work on the waterfront. We have an increase in cost there for the aquatic certificate training. And then down here is your security services. This is to bring in, we've had the security service budget all along for the gate guards, but we're adding to it. You see here $32,000 this year for the patrol monitors that we implemented last year. that we found very helpful in managing the parks.
So Kate, we had a question about this from a member of the RTM.
Right,
So
and
maybe we could give Pam the opportunity to talk about their decision to continue this service.
Would you like me to do that now, Jamie?
yeah,
If you don't mind, yes.
Sure. Yeah, yes, having been thrown into the pandemic, we thought that it was our way of trying to keep good management of all the new guidelines that we were trying to follow with the parks and keeping people safe, and also doing everything we could to keep all the parks open. So we first hired 2 seasonals, but by the time we got closer to the middle of summer, we learned the routine of the patrolling guards better. It's apparent that I think this job can be done by one. It was very, very well received by the public. The park monitor, or patrolling guard as we called him, was able to keep an eye on everywhere from Woodland Park to Cherry Lawn to both beaches, especially when they were so full, and we were concerned about social distancing. But not only that, it was I think he was just very well received by the public when they had questions or concerns. He was the eyes and ears of our small department.
So Pam, I certainly understand, because we worked closely together on how great it was to have the monitors during the pandemic. Can you just elaborate maybe a little bit more on what you see the role of the park monitors to be? Just general oversight of the parks, as you said, your eyes and ears on those facilities than we have right now?
Yes, I mean, it's really difficult for us. We have a park supervisor, myself, and assistant director. And between all the work that we're doing all year long in our parks, it's very hard to keep our eyes on all the parks at all times. And certainly our park crew is out there, but they're not there to answer public questions or make reminders about rules and things that people should or should not be doing in the park. So they're busy doing their, maintenance care. So, having this patrolling guard was really we got reports every single morning about what was going on during the weekends, or even before hours when we got in and after hours when we left. So it was just a very positive, well-received a position that kept us in the know when things were happening in the parks that we didn't know about, and we had an opportunity to change it.
What do other towns do? Do you have examples of if other towns have similar service?
Some other towns I know have hired, college kids. They've hired, I know right here in Guilford, they did something similar to what we did, but I think how we handled it was much more professional in terms of having a patrolling guard rather than just a student. And I think the students have a hard time, dealing with issues from adults. And I just think that the service that we provided really worked.
Pam, do you foresee 2 years from now, if we aren't dealing with the pandemic still, do you foresee a need to continue with the monitors?
Well, obviously, our second year, if it does get approved, is going to be really important, and we'll be able to better assess that. But I think that the positives behind having somebody there, I mean, we know that there are people, teaching private tennis lessons on our courts that, we're not even on duty yet, but the patrol monitor is able to say, this is not, you're not supposed to be making profit on town property. You can bring it to our attention when it happens. Just the reporting is phenomenal. And so I think having it this year, coming year, will be really important to whether or not we feel it should be continued.
Krista.
Thanks so much, Pam. Sort of on that same line, when you're going down the conversation of college versus professional, could you speak? I'm looking at the hourly rate as you've identified in these lines. Could you talk a little bit as to 2950 versus 21?
Yes, 21 is for the guards that are solely in the guardhouse. So they're checking passes, they're selling daily passes to non-residents. And the difference between the 21 and the 29 is that the 29 patrolling guard is using the company's car and, you know, zooming around town to different parks. And so that was the difference of expense.
I'm sorry, could you elaborate about the car a little bit more? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Sure, the company that we hired had a company car, so it had security on the car. So the car was visible to the public that it was a security. And the company had to pay for the liability and the gas and the insurance of the car. So obviously the security guards at $21 an hour didn't have that. So that 29 covered some of that cost.
Okay, so this individual drives around Darien in a private security company car, and that is explaining the difference in that hourly rate.
Yes, and I will also elaborate on the fact that, you know, 2 years ago, the price of this particular company was much lower, but they weren't making any money. It was like a break even. So last year, 2020, they weren't even going to bid on the job. But of course, we were at the point where we really needed to have the guards in place, plus having this patrolling guard, that we renegotiated the higher wages.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Looks like Dave has a question.
Yep.
If we're done with that line item, could I just back up one line item to the printing? It looks like it's a new item for this year, so I was unclear exactly what that was.
It's actually not a new item. It had been in a different org code. It was in the
Okay.
organized recreation facility. So it's the parking permits. What is new here is beach walk-in passes for $2,000 that Parks and Rec is anticipating a different kind of permit next year for walk-ins. But you'll see a decrease.
Okay,
in
so
the other
this printing is this printing then, it sounds like this printing is effectively the beach permits,
Yes.
not like the books that come out or anything.
Yes.
Correct.
And so where do we see the offsetting 2,600 or 2,000?
I'm sorry, organized recreation. It'll be the last org that we go to.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions on beaches?
Kate, I have one statement though.
Yeah,
I
sure,
forgot
go
to mention at our last commission meeting, they opted not to do the walking passes.
Okay, so we can cut that.
Yes.
Okay.
So the $2,000 one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Pam, why was that decision made? What was the rationale for not issuing walk-in passes?
Mixed reviews, but one major feeling was that, you know, there's so many regulations and restrictions, and they really feel that if somebody wanted to park at Henley and walk down, or that they should be able to do so. There's a daily pass in place for $45 per car per day, and that we want to feel like an open community as well.
Pam, I believe you have an update for us on revenues as well.
Yes, what the commission did decide to do was to raise the resident seasonal pass from $45 to $50, which this would produce, this would help to offset the expense of the patrolling guard. So we sell approximately 7,500 permits, seasonal permits, which would bring in approximately $37,500. And they felt that this was a good way of helping to offset the budget.
Okay, so we can make that adjustment to your revenue.
Correct.
So
Okay.
that 37,500, that's the incremental $5 on the 7,500 permits, or that's the total?
The incremental. The total is,
Oh.
right now, it's at 345,000.
All right, perfect. That pretty much covers one of my questions, which was how we were going to manage $45,000 in incremental beach parking permits. Got it.
Okay.
Then I did have a question just regarding beach parking permits. So just to clarify, we are keeping the same process whereby a resident buys a sticker for a car and drives in, and if you walk in, no charge.
If you're a resident.
If you're a resident, if you walk in and you're not a resident.
No, we won't be checking any walk-ins for resident or non-resident. But if you can't drive in, all cars, if you're a non-resident family coming from, say, Westport, and you don't have a seasonal pass, that's determined that you're a non-resident and you pay a $45 daily fee to get in. And we bring in about, I would say, anywhere from $18,000 to $27,000 of revenue at the gate that it can attribute to non-residents.
Or you park at Henley or St. John's or.
Right, and we have gate guards. Does it happen sometimes where an Uber pulls up and a family of 3 get out of the Uber and walk in? Yes. Does it happen often? No. So we are going to take a close eye on it this summer and revisit it next year.
Okay, thank you.
So Pam, was there any consideration given to raising that daily non-resident rate to $50 as well?
They did not.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up? I'm sorry. Of the beach parking permits, I'm sorry, what was the number of residents versus non-residents again?
Say that again?
Pam estimated $18,000 to $27,000 from daily passes, which could possibly be a non-resident who just doesn't want to get a seasonal pass, but generally that's going to be your non-residents. So the bulk of it does come from residential permits.
Okay, may I just ask a procedural question here, Kate, then?
Sure.
The Board of Selection, for our purposes, if we felt can we adjust that revenue number up?
On what basis?
Going back to the comment, we feel it'd be more appropriate to make a step also in the non-resident parking.
So let me put it this way. Yes, you could say we think the number should be higher,
Mhm.
but you cannot force them to implement a higher fee.
So we can recommend to the commission that they review that fee.
Right, but it's up to them to set the fees.
But we can set the revenue, well, we can recommend and vote to the Board of Finance to recommend a number.
You could say we think the beaches ought to bring in $500,000 in revenue and challenge the Parks and Rec Commission to go back and figure out how to do that. What you can't do is say we, the Board of Selectmen, establish the beach parking permit at $60 a car.
Correct. So that's why I was trying to tease out what are the numbers of over a season of the daily attributed mostly to non-resident versus.
Right. So I think Pam answered that with, you said 18 to 27,000, Pam?
Right, so you're looking at about 400 cars, 300 to 400 cars. And I also wanted to add one thing, just to make it clear. The commission had a discussion on it. I didn't mean to say they didn't have any discussion. They did. But there also, when you come to the daily non-resident fee, there has to be justification to continue to keep raising that daily fee as to why we're doing that. It's a $45. It's pretty consistent from neighboring towns, but there was a lot of discussion and back and forth about whether to do that or not. But I think that, if you requested for them to take a look at it again, I'm sure they would.
So I would just offer, sorry, Sarah, one more second. I would just offer that if Darien residents are going to bear the incremental cost increase in a higher annual permit fee to help offset the cost of the new patrolling guard, the same should apply to the utilization of the beaches by non-residents as well, reflected in the non-resident fee. That would be my rationale. But Sarah, you had a comment or a question.
No, I guess I know that last year, due to the pandemic, we closed the beaches to non-residents on the weekends. How did that affect our revenue stream? Were we in the lower end, the 18,000 versus the 27,000?
Yes.
Do we consider, do we think that may happen again this summer? Does this forecast take that into account?
It's hard to tell.
It is hard. No, it's hard to guess. It is hard to guess.
Yeah. I would say that if we anticipated a rise in the virus again, that we successfully managed the summer the way we did last year, and we could successfully manage it the same way this year.
Would you say 3 to 400 cars is a typical number prior to last year?
I just took the revenue and divided by the 45. So
I'm just wondering, we felt clearly people were staying around a lot more this past summer. Is that a typical average?
Well, we limited entrance to non-residents this year, so that was definitely on the lower side. And with really good weather and no restrictions and the daily passes flowing, that would be the high side of 27,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions on that topic?
Okay, I'm going to move into the grounds, field, and building expenses. This is our maintenance crew and the costs of, I'm sorry, this is not the maintenance crew. So the first one here, this is geese control. Coming back. Pam, would you like to talk about your plans for where you would utilize the geese control?
Yes, Tilly Pond is seemingly just a busy place for the geese to be. And we did have it under control when we did use dog service. We opted to see what kind of savings and whether or not the geese would come back or not. They did. I've unsuccessfully tried to throw in some other ways, but they have not worked. This 20,000 also would take Highland Farms in consideration, but that place also has a geese control issue. I think now that Highland is getting more active, and now that we can actually put some programs out there, perhaps that won't be a problem in the future, but today it is. So that would right now be, I want to negotiate with whomever, bids on the job, but for now that typically is what it costs. Town hall fields are a little bit of an issue as well.
Krista?
Tim, is that contract is a flat contract for the season, for the year, or is it as needed?
Well,
It has in the past
not been. Sorry.
It used to be for the season, correct? But we would be going out for a new bid.
No, it was annual. Town of Darien has had this service year round for 20 years. And they do offer seasonal, but it is then more expensive per week. So they try to make it, more affordable so that you keep them on for the year. Plus it's more manageable, I guess, for them because the geese come back in the winter time and then have their babies in the spring. And so it's more manageable to keep the service on all year.
Oh.
Okay. Anything else there on the geese control?
No, the only thing that I would offer is that I want to really thank Pam. I tasked her a couple years ago with trying to find an alternative to the high cost of this kind of geese mitigation. And, she did her best to find all kinds of different solutions, none of which were ideal. So here we are again, putting what I consider to be a very high expense back in the budget, but I think it's necessary. The geese are a real problem, but thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Tree maintenance, no increase there. If we look at facility repair and maintenance, you do see an increase in this budget. What we're looking at here, the primary reason for the increase is cost to maintain and repair concession equipment at the beaches. Parks and Rec is in the process right now of attempting to acquire first funding to buy the equipment, and then they'll go out and buy the equipment itself, so that we will hire, we will own the equipment in the concessions rather than the concessionaire owning it. We think it's a better model for the town and would likely bring in more revenue. So we're getting ready to go out to bid on all that. And that is a prime reason for the increase in this budget. Other than that, we're looking at, just general maintenance in the buildings, electric work, alarm system maintenance, some money for emergency repairs, mulch for the playgrounds, cleaning facilities, garbage pickup, paddle court repairs. David?
Kate,
Yep.
you mentioned the maintenance on the equipment. The funding for that purchase is already taken care of, right?
No. You should see that coming. We're targeting February 8th for the request to the Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so it wasn't in last year's budget, but there will be a request forthcoming.
It was taken out of last year's budget after the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. We have a slight reduction in the cost of water, just less usage. Other than that, go down to, the rest of the accounts are status quo until we get down to facility maintenance and repairs. Or I'm sorry, facility maintenance materials. Fun stuff, grass seed, turf, herbicides, clay. We have money in here targeted to purchase pesticide-free material for one of the fields at Cherry Lawn. We're going to try the natural method. And that's, that's causing a little bit of an increase in the budget. And I don't know if anybody has questions on that specifically. Okay. Do we have any other questions on the grounds, fields, and buildings section? All right, then
Kate,
I'm going, yeah.
Kate, sorry, the pesticide-free material is for one of our town fields. Does that also, are the charges incorporated for Highland Farm here?
Yes. For the one ring area that he had grassed in, the rest of the field at Highland is natural. But then that additional money will cover both Casey Field at Cherry Lawn and Highland Farm.
Great, thank you. Maybe you could reflect that in that note, Kate, in the description. Thank you.
All right. Going to go down to recreations facility maintenance expense. This is the crew. You see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members. The foreman and 5 maintainers. We do hire some seasonal staff. It's down for next year. The estimated cost is down for next year. Clothing allowance is based on our staff. We are adding some funding for the supervisor this year for the first time. He's not in the union. However, we feel it's appropriate to provide him with proper safety equipment. And that is that's really the increase you see there. Otherwise, this budget is, again, a status quo budget. Do we have any questions?
Kate?
Yep.
Yeah, it's not really an increased item, but I noticed that the equipment repair and maintenance line item, it looks like year to date we've only spent $200 out of a $4,900 budget. I was just curious if there's like some seasonality thing or if there's something going on there that would make the repair and maintenance so low for year to date.
I'm switching to Munis real quick, and we'll look that up. How's that?
Wow.
We actually have some expenses that have been incurred in our office waiting to be submitted as well.
Okay.
So this is what I don't know that you can see it, how small it is, but this is looking at last year. The bulk of the expenses do tend to come later in the fiscal year, which would make sense when, when their season is over.
Sure. If we mirror last year, it looks like we're going to eat up $3,000 of that in January and February. So that's cool. That's fine.
Okay. You all just disappeared on me for a moment. Okay. Let's go back up, and the last section is organized recreation and events. We do have some part-time salary costs there. That's down slightly. Here in printing is where you see the decrease, where we removed the $4,800 that was moved over into beach, because there is other printing that goes on here, the department brochure. There are flyers and things for park permits, but we took the beach specific things out and put it into the beach org, because that's where it really belongs. Do we have any questions on this section?
Kate, there was an RTM question on the revenues for
The
organized recreation and events.
Right. The question had to do with the increase that we're anticipating in revenues. As opposed to, so where do we believe that that's going to come from? And Pam, can you address that?
Yes, we and the commission level, we went back and forth about this. Originally, I came in flat at, 600,000, not understanding where we were headed with this, with the virus and how it was going to look. But I also remember, Jen talking about, budgeting for a normal year. And with that being said, we looked back on some of the anticipated community events and programs that we'd be doing, and that would be the additional 50,000.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything else in here? This would wrap up the operating budget. So we can move over to the Parks and Rec Capital, if everybody's okay with that. Krista?
Krista?
Quick question going back on the expenses. Could we talk junior sailing program?
Yeah, what about it?
Can you talk to us a moment on that? And is this the best way for this program? I am not intimately familiar with the program, admittedly, so is...
Okay, so let me tell you what we, in the past, we have actually run their payroll. So their instructors go on as our employees. We run their payroll. They reimburse us for all but $4,500 of that cost. We have informed them that we don't wish to do that anymore. We're happy to continue to provide them the $4,500 grant, but they need to be responsible for paying their employees and such.
Okay, or consideration just putting this into a park and rec program? Similar to tennis lessons, swim. It probably is not a budget discussion, but is this really the best way for this service, which I believe in and support? Is this the best way to deliver it? I guess is my question.
I think, that's a good question for the Parks and Rec Commission. Pam, I don't know if they've ever discussed that.
We've had many discussions over the years when Darien Junior Sailing, were in between, or their chair of the board moved out of town, and then there was another. So we were uncertain whether the Darien Junior Sailing would still exist. So we did have conversations about whether Parks and Rec would take it over, as they had in the many years ago when DJST went through the same type of thing. But Parks and Rec only took it over temporarily until they got on their feet again. And right now they seem to be in a good place. They have a good board with a lot of town residents that are very supportive of the program. And the only thing they did look for our support with payroll, and they do look to have that subsidy of the $4,500 because it's not a very big money-making program. So it really is about teaching these kids skills how to sail.
Okay, I just wanted to, again, make sure, one, it is viable. I think it's an important service that we're delivering to the community, and as long as the organization itself, and you feel it is doing a good job delivering this service and it's set up appropriately, then I'm fine with it. I just wanted to.
So far, so good.
Okay, I'm going to move over to capital.
Kate, as you're doing that, I just have a question for you. On Tuesday, February 2nd, we have a full night devoted to capital budget discussion.
Yes.
What are we going to do then if we're going to do capital budgets with every department?
Well, I wanted you to be able to take advantage of Pam being here if you had any questions on our capital budget. That night is more for deliberation because capital is such a big chunk of the budget.
Right.
I envision that as being more for your deliberation on which projects to continue to move forward. Tonight is more information gathering.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up the I wish I could, I don't know how to get rid of that. So what's funded, what I've put forward for funding in this year is small capital, which is a bit of a Board of Finance initiative to have some small capital in everybody's budget. Repainting the Weed Beach tennis courts, repairing the Cherry Lawn gazebo roof, dredging the Tilly Pond, the smaller pond at Tilly, and repaving the main path through Tilly. A Toro Ground Master lawnmower, and tree replacement at Tilly Pond. What was requested in this year's budget that I did not fund, the biggest one is the Cherry Lawn tennis court resurfacing. And the reason why I didn't put it forward this year was simply due to the size of the expense. Woodland Park parking repairs, and a stand-on blower for the park's crew. And I think that was it. So the tennis courts is something that we've been putting off for a number of years. We're going on 8 years now since the courts were painted. They should have been painted a couple of years ago. So I thought it's past time that we get this done. The gazebo roof. Now, we had some pictures of it. I don't know if they're in this file, but it's unsightly. It's rotting. It needs to be repaired. So Pam had looked at doing it in-house, but feels the job is too big for the crew. So we would have to outsource that. The small silt pond at Tilly needs to be dredged. It will improve the water quality, reduce toxic gases. If we don't do it, we'll continue to have algae and weed issues. At the same time, we'd like to repair the asphalt pathway. The reason why they're tying the two together is because we'd have to be bringing in some heavy equipment to do it. So to do both projects, so to do it only once, bring that heavy equipment in, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and here's a picture, so you know which one we're talking about, this small pond. This is one of the mowers. The idea behind getting this is we'd be able to be more efficient with our crew, get the parks ready when, sometimes we have a short window in which to get the parks ready for use. So this would allow us to have two crews working at once.
Could I just ask Pam to sort of elaborate on the need for that?
Yep. Pam?
Sure. As we increasingly get more land to have to manage, we have 6 guys. So in order to be able to spread them out and have 2 mowers on different parks just helps speed up the efficiency when needed. So Jim obviously has a good routine going on, but with 1 mower, it's hard. And plus 1 mower, even for Highland alone, doesn't allow us to take care of the other parks with our other crew members. And they're out walking with backpacks or trimmers. But with having that additional mower, it would be super helpful to be able to get all the work done quicker and more efficient and move on to other duties.
Okay, and then it looks like in next year's budget, we're gonna have to replace our existing mower, right?
Yeah.
It's in for $75,000.
Yeah, there's another,
Must be
the
a
Toro
larger,
5900.
a
Yes.
larger unit.
Yes.
Okay.
Krista,
I do. I'm sorry, do you want to continue on? I have a question about the blower.
okay, the other item that I funded was the tree replacement at Tilly, $5,000. Let me get back down there. And Pam, we did have a question from an RTM member asking if you were planning to replace trees at any other parks.
We do need more tree replacement at Cherry Lawn and Weed Beach and Pear Tree. So we did have a tree replacement program, which was an ongoing 5,000, but we have now we're going to be doing it per project. So I figured I would start at Tilly Pond for this particular item, and we will move on into the capital improvement project next year and choose a different park to go at. And plus we've had numerous groups in town. The Garden Club has been incredibly generous. They have planted about 25 trees at Cherry Lawn last year, just April 2020. But this small count, 5,000, will be to replace some of the trees that have either been hit by weather and come down, or they were unhealthy and had to come down.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Krista, you.
Yes, back on the blower. Is there any equipment anywhere else within the town budget or town facilities that could be utilized? I mean, are we utilizing our resources across departments? I'm just obviously throwing it out.
This
Is there a
would
way
be-
with Pam to get access to somebody else's blower?
No, there's
No,
no
I
other
don't.
department that has a stand-on.
I'm sorry, what was that?
There's no other department that has one of these. Do you already have one, Pam? And this would have been a second?
Yes, we were
Yeah.
requesting a second.
So for town hall or any other maintenance areas, we do not utilize this equipment?
We do have blowers, but not stand-on blowers. They'd be backpack blowers.
If I remember correctly from last year, Pam, part of the idea for the stand-on blower that got cut last year was to clean the new path at Weed Beach.
That was one of the suggestions, but we also looking at the path at Highland. We got the path at Diller. It wouldn't really work in Diller, but this is primarily a leaf blower, but it takes 50% less time on this stand-on blower than it would for guys to be walking and blowing. So it's just really a time saver. And as well as it can blow light snow as well. So that's also very helpful.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Pam on the capital?
Sarah?
I have a question for Pam, but it is not on the capital, so I don't know if you want to continue more on the capital.
You want to go back to the operating?
Can we just for 1 second?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, Pam. I was reminded of a
No worries.
question. Pam, real quickly, for the revenues for the paddle building rental, I was just curious, given that we've had a difficult time renting it with the limitations on people gathering in the past couple of years, do we feel that the 10,000 is an accurate kind of estimate? I'm speaking from someone who I rented the building. It's lovely. It is a fantastic option. You can have the whole beach to. I mean, it's awesome. But I'm just wondering if that's a good
Well,
estimate.
to
I know
answer
we're
your
guessing the
question,
following year. Yeah.
right. To answer your question, we were led to go into budget season to budget for a normal year.
Right.
And that would be somewhat my normal revenue.
Okay.
And really that's about 6 months between spring and October, when that's able to rent for the general public. Otherwise, the other half of the year is what we're in now, which is pretty much strictly paddle parties,
Right.
which are doing, where we have one requested for this weekend. So
Good. Good. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Krista?
Sorry, going back now to capital. Kate, I just wanted to ask a little bit more about the tennis courts at Cherry Lawn.
Mhm.
Is it purely a dollar issue, or why do you feel those should not be done?
Oh, it's not that I feel they shouldn't be done. I agree with the concept, and I also agree with should go back to the with Pam's recommendation that it be the post-tension.
Right.
It was strictly $1, and in the back of my head was also that you might be able to make the case with the Board of Finance to consider this if you're going to do any bonding. I mean, I'm not generally a fan of bonding for smaller capital projects, but that would be a place where you can maybe make a case. But it got to be, the budget was pretty big. And I felt that this was one that could maybe wait.
Kate, I think it would be helpful on this sheet to show the priority number, even for the things that you didn't fund,
Okay.
just so we can see how the commission has prioritized the projects.
Yeah, that was a priority one for them, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's important to know. I think this is an issue, one item I would like to have further discussion on as a possible add.
Okay.
I might also mention that it looks like for next year's budget, there's $200,000 in for paddle courts at Weed Beach. So next year, if we push the tennis courts to next year's budget is going to look pretty lumpy too.
Yes.
But we can discuss that on the 5th.
Second.
Second.
Sorry, got it. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else on Parks and Recreation?
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks a lot, Pam.
Yes, thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Thanks, Pam. I'm going to head back over to the police department.
Was there anyone back, any other elected officials who wanted to speak about Park and Rec? Do we have anyone just before we?
I
noticed
do
we had a
believe
couple.
we had received some questions from the RTM F&B, and I think we hit on all of those questions while
And
Pam was here.
There's no additional questions in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, so the police, their budget is 17% of our total town operation expenditures. We'll start in administration, but we'll work through that pretty quickly. The big nut is in communications. So looking here, full-time salary, that's the chief, the captains, an administrative lieutenant, and support staff. Overtime pays for the office administrator. That's a civilian. Holiday pay for the administrative lieutenant. We do have an increase in conferences and meetings for the administration here. And where's Dawn? Yeah, okay. We do continue to have officers attending the FBI National Academy, crisis negotiators. So this is conferences for the administrative officers. And so probably the most important thing I want to highlight here is professional services. This is testing. We are anticipating, we already have one officer who's retiring March 1st. We anticipate that there may be as many as 3 additional officers retiring in the near term, and it would possibly impact all ranks. Our promotional tests expire in May. So we have the possibility of needing to run tests for every level, from entry level, sergeant, lieutenant, and possibly even up to captain. So that is the cause for this increase in the budget. Okay. Any questions on the administrative part of the budget?
Don't see any.
Okay. I will take this one alphabetically. It'll be easier. Animal control, very small budget. This is salary for our animal control officer, and some other costs. This is training for him. He's mandated to complete training. We cost of the vet for any dogs that we have to take in, operating supplies, small budget, and no real change from prior years. All right. So this is the communications budget. And the request from the chief was to hire the 3rd shift of civilian dispatchers July 1. My recommendation was to push off the hiring until January 1 of 22. One reason for that was it's very difficult to, it's a long process between advertising, interviewing, testing, to hiring. We wouldn't be able to, with the May approval date on the budget, we wouldn't be able to get them in place on July 1 anyway. It seemed logical to move it back to January, give us more time. It lessens the pain in this year's budget a little bit. But I am and continue to be fully supportive of civilianizing the dispatch. It will allow us to put the police officers back out on the road where they should be, what they are trained to do, use them to their highest and best purpose. And with that, if the chief has anything he wants to add.
I see my picture is frozen, at least on my end, but hopefully you can hear me fine.
It's frozen on our end, but we can hear you.
Okay, so this dispatch proposal, I fully believe in from the beginning. I think nothing's really changed here. I think this is the best practice for the police department to get civilian dispatchers dispatching officers back to officer duties and give the best service that we can to the town. I still think, for the last 10 years that we've been discussing this, I still think it's a very sound proposal, and I fully support and believe in it, and I know the captains and the commission do as well.
Kate?
Yep.
First off, I'd like to thank the chief and Ms. Hufford for sending over that letter. I thought the information they provided about the school resource officers, the detective, and the officer for cybercrime stuff was very helpful. In that letter, he mentioned some troubles with scheduling for the day and the evening shifts, where sometimes they would not be adequately staffed at the dispatcher level. And I was hoping he might sort of elaborate on that, because, you know, to the layperson, it's a little hard to understand exactly why that would be.
Sure. On the day and evening tour, we have 6 dispatchers working total complement of dispatchers. 2 of them are assigned on a shift during the day and 2 during the evening. If any of the dispatchers are off, either on sick time or vacation time, personal time, compensatory time, we try to backfill that second position, but it's not always there's not anyone sometimes looking to fill that position on overtime. We were down to only 5 dispatchers because we had some who came and went, and that kind of also played into the staffing for dispatch. My envisioning of dispatch is a 24/7, 365, 2 dispatch positions. That is best practice. That's national standard for dispatch centers. Trying to do this with one civilian or one body in a dispatch center is just not best practice, and it's just not what we want. It is a two body position. So sometimes if we couldn't get a dispatcher to come back in on overtime, an officer from the shift would take that second spot to ensure on days and evenings that we did have 2 personnel in the dispatch center.
Okay, I get, Krista, do you want to go ahead?
No, finish your train of thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, you know, thinking ahead, I have a hard time envisioning how that situation might change if we're just going to hire people for the late night shift. So I'm wondering, how do we manage that other than having the officers go back on the dispatch desk? Because, you know, that's, you know, ostensibly the primary reason why we're getting the civilian dispatch, so they won't have to do that.
Right.
Well,
That will take.
There was a point where we were not up to the full complement of 6 dispatchers for the day in the evening shift, which contributed to our having some holes to fill.
Yeah,
Adding another,
I understand they were down a man for a large portion, right?
yes.
And this is kind of a bifurcated approach here. By having 3 additional dispatchers working the midnight tour, you do have a larger complement of dispatchers that may be available to staff vacancies. Now, there's no real cost savings there, but we do have to give people days off and vacation days. My envision of the dispatch program, and it's going to take some negotiation, is to have it staffed like we do with our sworn officers. Currently, we have a 6 officer minimum staffing contractually. There's 6 officers there whether they want to be there or not. The dispatch program, I want to see it run the same way. There will be 2 dispatchers working, whether they want to be there or not. Most of the time, it's voluntarily backfilled with overtime when someone's on vacation or a day off. But that is how I envision it happening. It's the officers and even sometimes sergeants that are staffing the communication center now, that will no longer be available to officers or sergeants. It is a completely different job staffed by civilian dispatchers, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I would
So
like to
what I'm hearing you say is that the 3 additional hires that you're proposing would be available to be called to fill in for overtime or whatever as necessary until you negotiate this change in the methodology.
That is my thinking, yes. Succinctly, in a nutshell, that is it.
All right. Thanks very much.
And I would like to just remind, as we've talked about civilian dispatchers for many years now, that these are professionally, specially trained telecommunicators. It is a very different skill set than what our officers have, although they do a good job the best they can. It's a dedicated skill set.
And as well, new officers and existing officers will not need to be recertified as telecommunicators, and new officers will not be getting trained to a telecommunicator standard. It'll be a different job. So only telecommunicators will be state mandated and state trained to that. Officers will just get their police officer training and not additional as telecommunicators.
Krista.
Still staying on the topic, to clarify, the overtime salary increase of 23% is just attributed to these 3 new individuals, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Another question on these dispatchers, do they interface physically with the public?
They do. They staff the communication center, but they also staff the walk-up window. So if you came into the police department, that is your first contact, unless you're speaking to someone in records. If you're there for a police function other than records, yes, you will be speaking to a dispatcher at that front window.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies the reason for the uniforms, because that was my other question, but I would feel they are appropriate in uniform if they are interfacing with the public. Thank you.
Many communication centers are what's called bunkerized. They are just a communication center. They don't have any interaction with the public. Our communication center does the walk-up window and the radio, hence we want professionally appearing employees.
Kate, I had a question.
Mhm.
At what point, if we have all 9 dispatchers on the payroll, would we be able to get off of the, is it CMed notification for the fire departments?
So we actually have a meeting scheduled tomorrow that the chief set up with representatives of the fire department to have a discussion on what their needs would be. I think there would need to be some time after the dispatchers were hired to have them up and ready and trained for the police dispatch. But then we would focus on getting them trained to do the fire dispatch. So it would be my expectation that in fiscal 23, we would be removing that item from the budget, and fire dispatch would come back in-house.
Okay, thank you. Also, I understand from the other sheet that the full cost of each individual is around $100,000.
I don't have that other sheet in front of me, but
That was the.
that sounds right, because the total cost is about $300,000 for the shift.
Got it. Thank you.
Don, we did have a question from an RTM member about what would be the opportunities and challenges of sharing dispatch with another municipality.
Well, WestCog has a voluminous study here that I have. It's phase 1 and phase 2. This is still ongoing. So this is something that we're involved in, not as one of the studied municipalities, but Captain Shredders is involved in this work group as to determining the viability and feasibility of a regional dispatch system. First and foremost, us getting civilian dispatchers would not preclude us from continuing that discussion. The lift of getting a regional dispatch center in Connecticut, the way municipalities and police departments are set up, is very difficult. There's no one out there at the chief's level that I have found yet who is really actively looking for a dance partner for some type of regional dispatch. I've never been totally adverse to exploring that opportunity. It does work in other states in the country, but they're set up either with a county system. Here in Connecticut, we have disparate RMS systems, disparate radio systems, disparate CAD systems. So it's just
Don, maybe you could explain those acronyms.
Oh, okay. Records management is our reporting software. It keeps all our records of the police department. CAD is the computer-aided dispatch. That's actually the computers that log the information and the calls for service in. And radio systems, there's 3 or 4 different bands that police departments in Connecticut, just in Fairfield County, are on. So they don't have interoperability. I see I'm back on now, so on the screen. So that's an issue. In areas of the country that are expanding and they have new incorporations, yes, they get together in a larger landmass doing policing. Here in Connecticut, it didn't evolve that way. We don't have regional schools. We don't have a county-based government system. We do have, kind of a county-based court system, but that's really the extent of it. So it's a very, very heavy lift, and it would have to be done even if we had buy-in from municipalities today. It would still be a multi-year approach, I think, to get to the point where a regional dispatch system could be viable.
Don, we share some radio equipment infrastructure with the city of Stamford. Do we have interoperability with the city of Stamford?
I believe Yeah, I believe we share the same CAD and RMS vendor. I'm not sure our radio system has interoperability. I think they're on a different spectrum. When we need a new CAD system, which I believe will be coming up in the next few years, we should be able to realize a substantial savings by jumping in on Stanford's backbone using the system, but it is not a combined CAD system. In the background, they're working together, but we would have our own, they would have their own. But there's going to be a significant cost savings if we can go to the dance with Stanford and jump on their system. So that there's something there that you know, we're working together with another municipality to try to save some budget funds.
Thank you.
You know, in 1925, up until 1925, when the police department came into existence, the town of Darien was serviced by the city of Stanford Police Department. Obviously, in 1925, the town of Darien decided they wanted their own. I think it was the right choice. I do think that our civilian staff and our sworn officers are a cut above what you get in other municipalities. I know I'm biased there, but I do like the ability to supervise our own staff, hold our own staff accountable, train our staff to the level that we think that people in Darien want and deserve.
I do think there's a possibility of state legislation that might ultimately mandate regional dispatch, so we'll have to keep our eyes out for that.
And again, I think if a regional or a shared dispatch system in Fairfield County ever came to fruition, that our staff would be the one that regional dispatch center would want. And I think our dispatchers, to the level of training we give them, they'll be the prime candidates to do that if it ever comes into existence.
Thank you. Krista, did you have a question?
Sort of picking up on that regarding pending legislation or recent legislation regarding police activities. I'm not pointing to anything in particular, but do you feel you have the budget to accommodate changes coming from Hartford, just in general?
Yeah, in our budget request, we have asked for the things that will make us compliant with the police accountability bill. I don't think anything in this fiscal year is going to be onerous budget-wise. It is a little bit of a change, but the fact that the town of Darien maintains a police department and trains a police department to the level that we do have put us well ahead of the curve from other departments. And that has been a consistent hallmark of our agency for as long as I've been here.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we good to move on from communications?
Yes.
All right. Fleet maintenance. There is one full-time person, our fleet mechanic. So that is him, his overtime. Small increase in equipment repair. This is maintenance of the police vehicles. We do have an increase in operating supplies, and that is to replace missing and damaged traffic cones and other equipment, things that have gotten damaged or lost during storms. And then tires have an increase, and that's because we've been told to anticipate a price increase from the vendor.
And additionally, on tires, to the 2020 Ford utilities that we utilize have a new tire size.
They're bigger.
So any tires that we have that are new, we will repurpose to another town agency or perhaps get them sold off to someone who can use them, so they don't go to waste.
Okay, any questions on fleet? All right. Investigative and youth expenses, or the Detective Bureau. So we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 officers in this budget. I'm trying to get to back. There we go. Sorry, a little difficulty navigating. Overtime salary for those officers, holiday pay. What you're seeing here, the increase in holiday pay. In our last contract, the union negotiated the option to take days rather than holiday pay. And so last year was the first year of that. We had to make an estimate of how many officers would take the days, the vacation days, rather than the holiday pay. And what we found is our experience has been slightly different than what we estimated, which is the reason for the increase. We're assuming that more of them will take the money rather than the extra day off. We do have a slight increase in the clothing allowance. We had a vacancy in the Detective Bureau, and so we brought somebody back, so that requires a slightly higher clothing allowance cost. And other than that, there's not a lot of increase. We do have a reduction in equipment. Slightly lower cost for the equipment contract. Do we have any questions on the Detective Bureau?
Confirming, Kate, this is where the SROs are?
No, SROs are in patrol.
Oh, okay.
This is the Youth Bureau. So these are officers that would
Oh,
deal
okay.
with, if a minor was arrested.
Mhm.
Don, have I got that right?
That's correct. We do all type of youth activity, just not negative youth interactions. Our youth detectives are very, very engaged with both the depot and other agencies, so it's just not in a negative environment.
Yeah, but this is separate from the SRO.
Okay, when I saw education in your commentary, it led me to think SRO, but thank you.
Okay. The next division is the patrol division. This is the largest single division. I'm not going to go through and count how many officers are in this division, but this is where the bulk of your police officers are. But just to show you the kind of work that the police department puts into this budget, you can see every single officer gets entered in here. They calculate out the step increases that will occur during the year. They calculate out the longevity bonuses, the educational bonuses for all the officers in this category. So quite a lot of work goes into preparing this budget.
And kudos to Captain Shredders and Mike DeSantos, who's our records officer. He came out of the banking industry, so a lot of times we get police officers out of other, types of work who fit very well. And Mike DeSantos is a home run to getting this accurate and complete when we submit it. So he's got it down to the penny, as far as I know.
It's great to be able to see that detail here in OpenGov as well. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. We do have, so the increases you see there are strictly contractual. We do have an uptick in overtime. And again, I think the department does a really good job here of breaking out things like mandatory training for the officers, firearms training, active shooter training, all the various types of training that our officers have to undergo, which occurs on overtime. And then there's just the backfilling where we are obligated to have a certain number of officers on a shift, or we have incidents that come up where we need to bring in additional officers. That is the largest chunk of that. And I think Don has done a good job, as have our past chiefs, in trying to manage that.
David?
Just Kate and Don, just quickly, on the patrol overtime, what was the attributable number for this current year? And is there any chance that there might be a little savings there from if we move forward with additional dispatchers?
Yeah, I certainly think there is prime opportunity for some savings. To answer your first question, COVID-19 and the lingering effects really affected our overtime budget in a positive way. If you can find a silver lining, some officers didn't choose to take vacation because there was nowhere to go. So we didn't need to backfill spots on overtime. So there's one silver lining there, but certainly if we have less or more than a minimum staffing, because we would have 2 civilian dispatchers, that does allow us to put officers to training assignments or some other service to provide without having to backfill that position all the time, including the Marine Division. I envision that if we, when we're up and running fully on a Marine Division staffing for the summer, that we can do a lot of it not on overtime because we have civilian dispatch. So there are certainly every opportunity that we're looking to save money on overtime. We're looking to fill these positions, put the officers where they need to be, when they need to be there, and why they need to be there at the most economical price point, if you want to call it that we can do it. So yes, that there is going to be some savings there.
So is there any reason to sort of take another look at the patrol overtime number that's in the budget to see if maybe it should not be quite as large as it is this year?
Yeah, well, in this case, if we're going to be filling, we won't be filling the dispatchers till at least halfway through the fiscal year. I would say that we have a pretty good projection on our overtime. TJ Moore, who's our computer whiz, he actually takes our data and extrapolates it out in 6-month increments. And this is the number that he comes up with every year. And surprisingly, he's usually within sometimes 3% of accuracy. So I think the number that we have in the budget this year is the right number for this year for overtime. Again, we are not looking to spend overtime. Like if we see we're ahead of the game, we're not going to fill slots that we don't need to just to spend our overtime budget. And we try to accurately project it, and I think in my time as a captain or the chief, have lived within our means on overtime. I don't believe we've ever overspent it, to my knowledge.
No, and I will say there are things that can happen that are really out of control of the administration that can impact overtime. If we had a number of officers injured on duty and off on workers' comp, or we anticipate vacancies, that can bring your overtime up. Sometimes what raises overtime ends up reducing your full-time costs.
Right.
So you have a movement there, but like I said, I do think the chief has done a good job of managing the overtime.
We get a winter storm, or we get a superstorm Sandy, or we get a significant jump in overtime simply because we hold staff over. We have to have officers there in the field. Sometimes they're working 16 hours because it just has to be done. Again, I'm always very appreciative and thankful for the support of all the boards who realize that we have to do this. A lot of times we don't have an option to staff it the way we need to staff it.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Overtime is listed at $566,000, of which $321 is true overtime. The balance, or $240,000, is all of the training mandates. I'm just wondering, of those training mandates, $240,000 worth, how much were coming out of the new police bill that was passed this past legislative session?
Oh, I'd have to turn to Don on that.
Yeah, and it's not a whole lot for this year. We had the budget for mandatory mental health screenings for officers, and we had the budget for mandatory drug screening for officers. And there is some element of crowd control training that we're required to do. But for this year, I can go to Bob Shredders too, who kind of oversees training. There's a couple other incremental small things, so that 2 or 3 hours of training in human trafficking. But I don't think it's a huge expense, a part of our a budget from the new police accountability bill. There may be more to
Okay.
come.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Another increase we're looking at here is in medical supplies. We have replacements for Narcan, general medical supplies that we keep in the cars, and then stuff related to the AEDs. And we're looking at an increase in weapons. We are anticipating a price increase there, and we have to replace some batteries. Don, was there anything else significant there?
It's a little bit small on my screen. The radar unit that we pretty much, we do one of those every year, and they kind of get replaced on a 10-year cycle. The taser cartridges, we are mandated to do taser training. You have to fire 2 cartridges every year. So I don't think there's anything else there that was new.
Okay.
Chief, the only new thing was the
Bob?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. The only thing that was new was the batteries on our new taser units.
Right.
Some of the batteries are starting to go, so we budgeted for that, and I just did a transfer with Jen for some batteries for this cycle that we didn't anticipate.
Those taser batteries are kind of special batteries, but they're certainly required. Those are the batteries that if you activate your taser, not fire your taser, just activate the electronic portion of your taser, it automatically turns on your body cam and your dash cam. One less thing the officer has to do. Again, that's best practice, and you know, my risk management hat. I like having those batteries in those units.
We need to go back up to operating supplies. And we need to replace some traffic signs, some bollards, speed sentry signs, batteries, and support for the regional emergency response team, and then some gas masks. We need replacement gas masks. So we do have an increase there of a few $1,000s. Is there anything else? Any other questions for patrol? Okay, going to move on to professional standards. This is an area where you're going to see some increases as a result of the police accountability law. We have one full-time equivalent, the training lieutenant.
Correct.
Holiday pay. Here's where your increase is in training services. So this lays out all the different types of certifications we have to get. And then, Don, if you would help me out by pointing out the ones that are related to the accountability law.
Well, the cost for recruit training at the police academy did not come directly out of the police accountability law. That came before that. But we used to send officers to the state of Connecticut recruit training academy for now it's a period of 26 weeks, and the state bore that cost. We would have to supply paper, we would have to supply ammunition, but we didn't pay tuition. Now the tuition, I believe, is $4,000 or plus that we have to pay to the state of Connecticut for tuition.
$4,500.
Yeah, $4,500. So we're budgeting. Our projection is that we could be filling 4 new patrol officer positions in fiscal 22. So we're budgeting for that fee. So that is something, a substantial increase there in that area. Again, no choice to pay for recruit training unless we get certified officers, which we will often try to do.
But if we get a certified officer, there is the possibility that we would have to reimburse the community from which they came for the cost of their training.
Correct, and it's calculated different in different municipalities. but I still think it's a significant savings. We don't take a certified officer simply because they're certified. We want a certified officer that's going to meet our standards. And by and large, only a misfire here and there, we have done very well going down that avenue. It's just, again, a testament to the way the town is run and the way the police department is run, that certified officers want to come here and work.
So also in this budget is any employee education or tuition costs for officers going through getting a degree program. That is down this year. We only have one officer currently going to get another degree.
And that's a very good problem for us to have in the town of Darien right now. Most of your officers have a 4-year, if not a master's degree. Again, a testament to the quality of the people that we have. Most of our officers have completed their 4-year undergrad work, whether they had it when they came or they did it when they were working. So, good problem to have right now.
Yeah, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a number of our officers who have advanced degrees, they're in things like social work, which is a real plus with the police work.
Correct. Social work, sociology, psychology, criminal justice are the major ones, but certainly with the thrust forward on police as caretakers. We've had people with licensed clinical social workers. We have crisis intervention trained folks. It is certainly the wave of the future. And again, you hear me say this time and time again, I think we're well ahead of the curve for most municipalities, police agencies from that regard.
Okay, anything else on professional standards? All right, records. We have a records officer and a couple civilians in this budget. The increase that we're seeing here is primarily holiday pay. Again, it's the same thing we talked about earlier, that recalculating our experience on how much time they'll take versus how much pay they'll take. Some increase for software. This is a large budget. The police have quite a few software programs. You can scroll through the list. There are a lot of them.
Gone are the days of pen and paper, much to my chagrin a lot of times.
Any questions on records? Okay. Next, we're down to crossing
Hey,
guards. Yeah,
I'm sorry, back on the, the software maintenance and support. I'm sorry.
Yep.
What are we seeing there?
A 5% increase.
I'm sorry, year to date is 100. I'm sorry, I was thinking last year was 100.
Well,
So-
but software support, those kind of things are, they're generally one-time a year payments, and it depends on when did you buy the software. So that $100,000 is not indicative of it being 6 months. You could, some instances have the whole $200,000 spent in the first quarter if that's when your renewals come up.
Right.
Okay, all right, sounds good, thank you.
School crossing guards. It is what it, exactly what it says it is. We do want to have a discussion with the schools to have them in the future take this over. So there's a chance that next year we won't see this.
Yeah, Kate, I thought that was going to be, again, it's a wash to the community. It's an important service, but I don't understand why this is in the Board of Selectmen's budget.
Either do we.
Okay,
And
so can we cut 60?
Well, I think that's kind of a board-to-board discussion. If you want to, I'm happy to carry out the board's wishes in this regard. And I'm sure Don is as well.
just real quickly, coincidentally, I was on an email trail today from Fairfield County Police Chiefs discussing this very issue. There was a chief from Fairfield County who was in the same boat that we are, and they were looking for how other municipalities did it, how they funded the school resource officers, and why. So I do have a little bit of more information. Just came across my desk today. So we have.
This is the
we have
crossing guards.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm mixing. This was school resource officers we were talking about. School crossing guards have been in our budget since as long as I've been here. We've always trained them. They've always been in our budget. So my mistake. It's not the SROs that we're talking about.
Then
So I'm sorry, Krista. This is an important discussion, and I think that we should have it. But I don't think that we can have it in the context of these budget discussions, because the Board of Education has already put forward their budget and they're well into their deliberations. So I think it's something that we should address after this budget season, get the chief and the superintendent and a couple of us together to talk about it.
I would support that. Thank you.
Okay, so the last cost center here is the station operation. This is the building maintenance. We have 1.5 people here. The reason for the decrease is our longtime full-time custodian retired and was replaced, and that individual started at a lower step. So that's where you see the decrease there. Increase in our cost of waste disposal, some increase in the facility repair. I think the Public Works Department has worked very hard with the police department this year to get control of the systems there. We have a slight uptick in our equipment contracts related to the HVAC. But everything else is pretty stable. An increase in go ahead, Don.
It's certainly my goal to see that expenditure for police, for facilities maintenance to not rise and to come down. And again, just to echo Kate's remarks, the DPW guys have been doing everything possible to get a handle on these ongoing issues. And I think they've done a good job. I think you should see that number either stay flat or maybe even reduce in the years to come as we fix things that weren't quite right at the beginning.
That's what I was wondering. Can we even bring that down now, since you've indicated we seem to be stabilizing that problem? I mean, hopefully, could we bring that down now?
Anything's possible. But we get one of these major, we've had 3 or 4 serious leaks in the domestic hot water system in our building over the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And that requires 2 people to be there, usually on a holiday weekend, for quite some time. They have to drain down the entire system. So that does come about some serious expense when we have a major malfunction like that. So I think I'd like to keep it at that level and reassess next year when we're back here.
We've had some ongoing septic system or sewer system issues.
That I believe is rectified. I'm crossing my fingers every day. Every day we go further without any issue. I'm very happy when I come in the morning and don't find any of those issues.
No, I was so pleased to hear many of these issues have been resolved, understanding we had to put the expense in for the current year, but as they're resolving themselves, would we start to see the savings, or we wouldn't have the need for those expenditures?
I think we need a little bit of time now that the improvements have been made to see how it all works out. But I would hope that would be something we could do for the future.
Yeah.
Okay, if we've got nothing else in station operations, we'll take a quick run over to the Capitol. All right. Again, small capital, that's part of the Board of Finance initiative on the reserve funds to allow certain departments to have the small capital items. So what we're going to be looking at is vehicle replacement, crowd control equipment, AED replacements, the mobile data terminal replacements, and an Axon interview recording system. So starting with the vehicles, $193,000. We are looking at, I'm looking for the number of cars here, Don.
I think that was 3 marked cars and
3
one,
marked cars.
1 administrator.
Oh, sorry, it's right up here. 3 marked cars.
4 cars in total.
Okay. So we did a number of years ago to a 3-year life for the cars, as opposed to previously we'd had patrol cars only run for 2 years. This is standard. This is put out to bid. It's not an unusual year for that.
It works very well. This dates back to Captain Com, who developed this program, and we've come a long way from replacing our fleet every year, like we did when I came on in 1983. We got a complete new fleet. The cars are simply better. They last 3 years, but when they get to the 3-year mark, the patrol cars especially are very, very tired with the amount of hours on them.
But we do generally put them to further use. We often trade them or hand them down to a town department who needs a vehicle, rather than buying new for the town department.
That's correct.
The next item is $23,274 for crowd control equipment. This would outfit 25 officers with the proper equipment for crowd control. It wouldn't be just here in Darien. We are obligated to assist our neighboring communities if they have situations where they need crowd control. And it's something that I think we should do for the safety of our officers.
Yeah, I concur. And 2020 was a little bit eye-opening for us, right? We did have protests here in Darien. Every municipality around us had them. A lot of municipalities around our area had protests that were much more volatile, if you want to say that way, than we did. Blocking highways and for extended period of time. We're conjoined and obligated under our mutual aid plan to send officers to other municipalities under mutual aid when they have emergency situations. And I'd be hard pressed to send officers either in town or into other municipalities without having this equipment. This is not something really I'd like to talk about or even think about, but that's why I have less hair and gray hair. These are, unfortunately, in 2020 and 2021, this is equipment that we have to have on hand.
Sarah?
Just a quick question. I assume if this is for 25 officers, this is similar to like riot police gear, like shields or something. Is that what this is? I just was curious.
Yeah, it's helmets, chest protectors, shin protectors. It's just a little more equipment to try to keep our officers safe in the middle of a melee, which could crop up, unfortunately, in this day and age, any day and any time.
Thank you.
And Chief, is the goal to outfit all officers? Are we doing half this year and half next year?
Yeah, in discussion with Captain Marin, that's exactly what we figured. We would monitor the situation nationally and across our area for the next year, and we'll go from there. The odds are we'd never be putting all 51 sworn officers out in riot gear, but for the next year, figure if we had half now, maybe we don't need another half depending on the tenor of the nation next year. If we think it's still the same or worse, we might be coming back to outfit each officer with that gear. That's correct.
Thank you.
The next item is to replace 2 AEDs, the automatic defibrillators. The police are first responders to emergency situations, so they carry the AEDs in their vehicles. They're at the end of a useful life and they need to be replaced.
The ones that are in the car are no longer supported. Again, we try to do this on a regular basis to So they're on a 7 to 10 year cycle for AED replacement. Yeah, it's the piece of essential equipment that we have to have.
Then 3 mobile data terminals. As you know, officers have these terminals in their vehicles. It allows them to be much more efficient out in the field. They don't have to keep coming back to the police department to do their reports. So this is replacing 3. Again, items at the end of their useful life.
It's just kind of as an aside here, this is new technology. You know how fast technology moves. This is new technology where the officer, this will be an armor-coated tablet that the officer would be able to actually take out of the car, which he can't do now or she can't do now. Take it into scenes and take statements or take photographs on this tablet, as well as operating as the MDT in the car.
And then last is an in-house video interview recording system. The current system is not working well, malfunctioning, and this is something that we do have to have. We have to be compliant with state statutes. Don, I don't know if you want to give a little bit more color on what it does.
Well, everyone knows in this day and age, if it's not on video, it didn't happen. Under state statute for all A and B felonies and capital felonies, any interview of any suspect or witness has to be recorded, audio and video. We take it a step further. If we're interviewing someone in our building for a criminal offense, they are on video. Our case cracker system, which is our current system, is 11 years old. It is no longer supported, as we find out in software on an all too frequent basis for me. This new system is the state of the art, best practice. It is the Taser Axon platform, which is the same as our in-car cameras and our body cameras. So all the data would be stored on the same system. All that data would be in the same place. This allows us to instantly transmit the data from this system right to the court rather than downloading it on thumb drives or CD-ROMs. So I would think that we would get at least a decade, if not more, out of the system, because Taser Axon is a very forward-looking company, and they will always be updating their product. And this is more than one location. It's just not one camera system. It's throughout the building for multiple recording stations and different interview rooms.
So that is the end of the capital that has been put forward for this year. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Don, thank you. Jerry, Bob, thank you both for being here.
And commissioners, well, we worked very well together this year crafting the budget. And again, you've heard me say time and time again, the police department's all pulling in the same direction from the top on down. And we hope to continue that in the years ahead. So thanks to all the commissioners, Board of Selectmen. I appreciate your time, and I especially appreciate you recognize that we're doing the best we can to pedal this bike in the right direction.
Thank you very much, Chief and Captains, for joining, and Commissioners.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Next up is the library. And I really don't have anything to say on this because it's not a town department. I see Kara is here.
Yes, hi, Kira. If you would like to speak to us about your budget, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, if it's okay, I think Tammy, our board president, wanted to just say a few words before I dig into the details of this budget, if that's all right.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. I had to get off mute, sorry. Good evening. As always, thank you for having us. And from the library, we have Kira Parrott, who I hope you have all met, and Caroline Lopez, Elizabeth Marcola, and some other people. And we have many of the Board of Trustees. Thank you for the time and energy that you put into the budget process. We are all beneficiaries of your sustained work on this. Thank you. It certainly seems like more than a year since we were here last. And while this has been a difficult year for everyone, it has been momentous for the library in a few positive ways. We were able to come together in person in the summer to celebrate the retirement and service of our longtime director, Alan Kirk-Gray. And after a nationwide search, the library hired new director, Kira Parrott, who is only the third director of the library in the last 42 years. Kira has hit the ground running thanks to the support of our strong team and has moved the library forward through the ongoing challenges posed by the pandemic. The library's service to the town during COVID has been resilient and creative, with the development of fantastic online offerings and programs and getting books and content into people's hands. But that is just the part that you see. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes. The librarians who've been reaching out to individual patrons throughout this time to check in on them. The reference librarians who continue to answer literally hundreds of questions every day, whether the building is open or not. Sometimes you just need a person to pick up the phone and answer a question or explain how to do something. It's this type of service, including making sure that tax help was still available during the shutdown and supporting residents with job searches, that exemplifies Darien Library's commitment to connection. Connecting patrons to content, surely, but more importantly, providing human connection for Darien residents, providing the kind of care that we all hope to see and be part of in our town. The budget that you have in front of you reflects our values. Kira, working with Caroline Lopez and Elizabeth Marcola, has put together a budget approved by the board that supports the library's core mission, but does not propose new initiatives given the challenges of this time. We ask you to support our budget request, which we believe to be carefully thought out, and I will now turn it back over to Kira for the details.
Thank you, Tammy.
Great, thank you. And I think I'm gonna share my screen. I think Kate's gonna, oh great, let me do that so I can pull up these details. So good evening, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all and especially thank you for your long history of supporting the library. As you know, the library and the range of services and collections and programs that we provide are made possible through the long-standing partnership that we have with you, the town, taxpayers of Darien, and the support of the Friends of the Library. I'll take you now through the major drivers of the budget, where you'll see increases and why, important context around any of those increases, and how we work to really keep those increases as low as possible. So let's dig in. On page 2, let's see, of this budget. You will see this chart that outlines the major categories of our budget and the totals at the bottom. We were very cognizant of the need to have no more than a 3% increase overall, as per your goals as a board and as per the guidance articulated by Mr. Zagrodzky at the State of the Town address. So you'll see that, as Tammy said, our budget includes no new initiatives, our head count remains flat, and what is there is wholly focused on core operations. You'll see that we come in at a total increase percentage of 2.61%, which is about $103,000 dollar increase over the current fiscal year, or 4.1 million in total. You'll see that I did highlight some subtotals of the budget increase before the employee benefits and risk management lines were applied. We are privileged to be included in the town's, some of the town's benefits like retirement and insurance and dental and so on. But I wanted to show that the increases, before those increases were applied, you can see that our core operations, staffing, building operations, and library support yield just an increase of just 1.83%. And we'll go into what those are. As you can see, hopefully in that pie chart, the vast majority of our town grant, 65% of it is comprised of staffing. So we worked really hard to apply as much pressure and additional rigor in that staffing line as we possibly could. So how did we do that? Rather than include a 3% increase for all library staff, which has generally been the case most years, we conducted updated salary benchmarking research. I looked at every position in the library in order to develop an appropriate salary range based not only on looking at the state of Connecticut and median salaries across the state, but comparing to our peer public libraries here in Fairfield County. And this enabled us to identify what I call the green circle individuals, staff members who are compensated below, well below the median salaries for comparable positions in the county. Those individuals are prioritized in this budget proposal, and they would be eligible for up to 3% merit increases, while all other staff, with the exception of myself, who will remain flat, all other staff would be eligible for up to 2%. And I do say up to because these are merit increases. These are based upon employee performance. They are not standard of living increases. Going along with that, this year the library has instituted biannual performance evaluation, a process that happens for the first time on an institutional-wide scale. And I believe that this is going to be a really important and powerful tool for us to determine specific and appropriate merit increases for each staff member within that approved range. So it was really by doing this benchmarking exercise that we were able to apply new rigor to the staffing line. And really keep our overall staffing percentage of the budget, the biggest part of our budget, below 1%, a total increase in staffing of 0.79%. I did want to direct your attention to one other thing in terms of staffing, and that's the full-time equivalent. If you look at the large proposed budget spreadsheet, which is this this here, you'll see that. Let me see if I can move that around so you can see that. You'll see that line. That's line 10 in the FTE. At a quick glance, that can be a little misleading. Our FTE is up 0.93, but I wanted to clarify that we are not increasing our full-time headcount or benefits. This slight increase in that FTE results from the new vacation policy that our board has adopted. So some of you may recall in last year's budget discussions some issues with the carryover time. So that has been remedied by this new policy that very strictly limits the number of vacation days that library staff members may carry over into the next fiscal year. This budget proposal for next year includes just a slight increase in our part-time hours in order to cover the public-facing time for those full-timers, thereby encouraging to use that vacation before they lose it. And just briefly on benefits, benefits make up roughly 21% of our town proposal. So you'll see that we budgeted increases in health, dental, and long-term disability. We've got 12.21% increase in our retirement contribution per town guidance, and also per the numbers we got from the town, a 1.97 increase in property and liability insurance. Let me move that over. Moving down to the next big section of our budget is building operations. So you'll see in the big spreadsheet the itemized line items. So this is the things that keep the library building, operational, the lights on. So it's gas and electricity, water and sewer, things like outsourced cleaning service, carpet cleaning, window cleaning, trash removal, landscaping, and the maintenance for the library truck that we do our plowing with, office supplies and janitorial supplies and so forth. The number I really did want to direct your attention to is the maintenance, contracts, and repairs line, which if you're looking at that big spreadsheet, that's line 21. This is another one that looks a little alarming out of context. You'll see a 32% increase, but that is because there was a decrease in the current fiscal year. This year, the library installed a new Linkso materials sorting system. This is the system that allows patrons to return their library materials through the drive-up or the machine in the lobby. That was a capital project funded by the Friends of Darien Library, totaling about $364,000. And the Linkso company waived the usual annual service fee of about $20,000 or so because of that installation. Next fiscal year, that annual fee comes back. So if you take a look at the prior year in that same line, which was about $124,000, you'll see that into next fiscal year, when you're comparing more apples to apples, we're actually down slightly, which is nice. Finally, the other thing I wanted to highlight under building operations was how COVID has impacted the library budget, both last year, in the current year, and moving forward into the next fiscal year. And you will see on that large spreadsheet a breakdown of exactly the numbers I'm talking about. So typically, we don't have a surplus in our town budget at the end of the year, and and that's primarily because the bulk of it, as you've seen, is staffing and benefits, which is incredibly stable. And we work really hard to be as conservative and on target as possible with the other estimates. Last year, because of COVID, though, there were some savings, notably in electricity and repairs, and all of those savings totaled about $70,000. And I believe, as Caroline and Alan mentioned before the Board of Finance this past June, that surplus of about $70,000 at the end of the fiscal year was used to prepay into the current year in those lines, which incidentally has been enormously helpful in ensuring that we have not gone over budget in the current year. We are continuing to buy PPE, additional sanitation, cleaning and sanitization supplies, and using the services of an outside cleaning company that comes every evening to disinfect all of the spaces in the library. The budget for next year anticipates that we are still going to need to keep purchasing a lot of these COVID-related supplies, but at a slightly lower volume. So we've adjusted for that, knock on wood. So those are the major drivers of our budget proposal, but I just wanted to mention that in the later pages, you'll also see an articulation of the investments that the Friends of the Library have made over the last couple of years, totaling some $2 million. All of those are meant to improve efficiency, to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck in terms of, our usage and our HVAC and gas and electricity and all of those things. You'll also see a narrative talking about the different ways that the library has responded during COVID, the pivot to virtual services and providing access and opening our doors as quickly as we could, as safely as possible, stepping up during the August power outages, so on. And finally, just some really excellent statistics that I think highlight the return on your investment, on the taxpayers' investment in the library. We are once again a nationally ranked 5-star library, one of only 85 in the nation, and the only library in the state of Connecticut to receive that distinction. Compared to our peers in Connecticut, we are #1 in circulation per capita, #1 in e-media, young adult, as you can see, really impressive showing across a range of key performance indicators that are used to measure public library performance and success. We're very proud of the service that we provide to Darien. We're continually looking for ways to improve our service, to partner with town departments, local businesses, nonprofits, in ways that maximize our efficiency while also maintaining the level of excellence for which we are known and for which the community expects. And with that, I will stop and answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Kira, thank you very much. Really appreciate your detailed presentation, your thoughtful budgeting this year, and as always, your partnership with the town of Darien when we need to partner with you, especially in times of emergency. So I'll turn to my board for any board questions. Yep.
I just a question. What is the new carryover policy in terms of days, in terms of vacation?
So full-time staff members are able to carry over 8 vacation days, a maximum of 8 vacation days into the next fiscal year, but they need to use them before December 31st or they lose them.
December 31st of the following year.
Right, of that new, so you know, beginning in July, so you have when that clock starts ticking July 1st, you have till December to use those 8 days or however many you've carried over.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Krista. I think you're on mute, Krista.
I'm sorry, thank you. Kate, can you clarify how that policy compares to staff in town hall of carryover vacation?
It depends on the bargaining unit group. It's more stringent than most of our policies. The police can carry over 5 days. Town hall and Public Works Union can right now carry over twice their annual accrual. So if you have an employee who earns 2 weeks a year, they can carry 4. But somebody who earns 5 weeks a year can carry 10. Non-represented employees can carry 5 weeks over, regardless of how many weeks they earn a year. We are in negotiation with the Public Works Union. We will soon be in negotiation with the Town Hall Union. It is an item that has to be negotiated.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious as the comparison. My next question is in regard to COVID expenses. Are these expenses open, eligible for reimbursement in any way, shape, or form? I'm not sure how libraries are considered and had that been pursued.
So I did look into that earlier this year. The State Library of Connecticut did receive some funding from the governor, but the state library essentially conducted their own evaluation based upon from what I can tell, demographics in the state of Connecticut and had a short list of, I think, about 50 libraries who they decided would receive some additional money to sort of cover COVID expenses. Darien was not included, with the exception of Bridgeport. No public libraries in Fairfield County were included in that. We did go back to the state librarian to plead our case and to push back a little bit against that decision, but that has stood, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for trying.
Yeah.
Any other board questions for the library? Are there any questions from Board of Finance or Finance and Budget Committee members for Kira or Tammy while they're here? If so, please indicate you'd like to ask a question in the chat.
Kira, thank you for coming tonight and going over everything. We'd also like to thank you for keeping the staffing increases small.
Okay, I see no questions in the chat. So thank you all very much for joining tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, last, certainly not least, on our agenda tonight is the Public Works Department.
Oh, actually, Kate, may I ask a quick question just before you get going? Can the supporting documents for the library get on OpenGov?
I think Jen's already done it. While Kira was speaking, Jen
Oh,
loaded them up.
Oh, look, she
Okay.
did. Yeah.
Perfect,
Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
You should have them in your emails as well.
No. I saw them in the email. I just didn't see them on OpenGov, but perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So Public Works, second to the police department in size, 8.7% of our expenditure budget. There is a small increase. It gets off a little easy this year because the union contract is in negotiation. So the bulk of the wage increases is borne elsewhere. Ed on camera.
Hello, Ed.
This is the first time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. So we'll start in management. This is Ed and Darren and their office staff. I want to point out, we do allocate a portion of their salaries to other areas, such as the sewer fund and the parking fund. It varies depending on the individual and the type of work they do. But there's no change in headcount. And then we have a small decrease in professional services, but otherwise this is nothing terribly exciting here. I'm going to move to our the biggest part of the budget, the roads budget. This is our highway crew. You do see a slight decrease in the full-time salary. You may be aware that unfortunately we lost a longtime employee to COVID. We are in the process of filling that vacancy. It will be filled internally. The new employee in that position will be at a lower step than James was. So that's the reason for the decrease here. What you're going to see, and you may not see it by the time you're done with the budget, but we'll be making refinements to this because we have one employee will be applied for the vacancy. That'll start a domino effect of other employees within the union bargaining unit moving into different positions, and then it'll finally all shake out at the end. So maybe when we get to the Board of Finance level that you see additional reductions made in this as we adjust for the movement. We're looking at some minor decreases here. We do have an increase in equipment repair and maintenance. We moved an item that was in the building department's budget for their, for some reason, I think it was an old holdover. They had some of the motor vehicle maintenance for the building vehicles in their budget. We moved that into the public works budget this year. But you can see the various types of equipment that we have to replace and repair. That's done primarily in-house. We have an increase in heating fuel. That's based on our actual usage, but increased demand charges we are anticipating. The fun one, I always like this one. Every 2 years, we have to buy tires for the loader at a cost of $15,000. Now we're able to save 2 existing tires.
That's correct. That'll be 8.
So we have 8 tires, but we only have to buy 6. and these are special tires. So you see this, if you look back at the history, you can see that it jumps. And if we had more years of history, you can see every 2 years it jumps when we have to buy the tires for the loader. Are there any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Kate. The fuel and lube account, I don't know if you had looked at that or not. The unit price that I used was a little bit higher on gasoline than what we have right now. So we'll see a half a year at least of some substantial or some savings. So you may want to look at that.
Thank you.
Sure.
I believe I should have done that sooner.
That's it.
And all of those accounts on gasoline are basically, people have to put their cards in at the pump, right? So you can tell what's getting what.
That's correct. They have every car has a chip key. Every employee has an employee number and a code. So we track it each department and their uses.
Got it.
It was interesting when we first put that in, how our gasoline usage changed.
I mean, went down, I bet.
It went down, yes. But you see, we have the fire departments are in here, Parks and Rec, building, health, police, all the departments are in this budget.
There are 5 other ones that we bill out separately.
That would be EMS, at home.
Board of Ed, Tokenique, and sewer.
Okay. Do we have any questions on the roadway? This is where our overtime is snow. Ed is anticipating 7 storms at overtime, 11 storms at double time. And then we allow for other call outs, things related to paving. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. We'll go down to waste management. This is I'm going to give it the wrong name, recycling center. And
May I ask
transfer
a question back on the overtime?
Yep.
I'm sorry. I appreciate the detail. Thank you very much. I'm just looking at the number in aggregate, comparing it to 2018, 2019. Is it a function of wages also going up?
It's a function of, well, this budget, because the contract is open, the union contract expired June 30th, 20. So some people have been getting steps in the meantime under the old contract, but you'll see more of an impact after the contract is settled. Really, I would say it's an impact. It's a function of how many storms have we gotten, and when do those storms occur? If you're raised like I was, you pray for snow between 7 and 3 on Monday through Friday. So it really is. It's a function of when how many storms and when they occur.
Clearly, you can anticipate storms. I can very much appreciate that. I'm just looking at it versus 56,000 in 2019.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, going back to waste management. We have 2 full-time equivalents in this budget, the scale operator and the waste equipment operator. There's a little bit more overtime here because of the hours of the transfer station, because it's open on Saturdays. One of the employees is scheduled to work Tuesday through Saturday, but when that person needs to be replaced, that does cause us to incur overtime if they have a vacation day. So you have a little bit more in this department than you would normally in some other departments. Our solid waste disposal costs are, for general solid waste, are staying stable. Waste management, the hazardous waste disposal is up, and that's based on primarily on the number of households that participate in that day.
And Kate, also, we had to go to a new vendor. Our previous vendor had some issues, so we could not hire him again. We have a consortium of 8 towns that are involved. We did have to put it back out to bid, and the prices per household did increase. Now, the good thing is now here in town at the transfer station, we do take paint at the transfer station all year long. So we'll be able to keep our numbers low, but there is an increase due to the fact that with the new vendor, their unit prices had increased.
I mean, otherwise, this budget is very stable. I want to switch over to the revenue on this. So we're anticipating slightly lower revenue in the disposal permits and in tipping fees in this budget. That they are a major offset, but we are expecting that to be down. Tipping fees is based on volume, and disposal permits is based on the number of people who actually buy the permits.
I'm curious why we're anticipating less permit sales.
That was my question, Jamie. Yeah.
We had a circumstance this past year where we didn't sell as many going up into July 1st, and we have shown an increase now. That is going to actually happen again. So we sold from July to September. We had a major increase in this year, and we'll actually go back to what we'd hope to be a regular routine in May, June, and July of this coming fiscal year. The problem is we are starting to see a decline to begin with. So I took a small reduction in the disposals. That's all, permits.
Are you seeing, Ed, more people have private haulers?
I see a lot of them not buying that second permit right now. That we saw through COVID. Everybody was home. They didn't need the second or even the third. We did see a slight uptick in seniors also. They do get the first one for free. It just, I don't say a perfect storm, but it just, our standard start selling in May and the majority are sold before July 1st didn't happen this past year. There's going to be a catch-up phase. And we get to the next year, you're going to see that that 308 was, I think, a little aggressive, where you see the numbers previous were down below 300,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we'll go to public buildings. The full-time salary, this is our 4 custodians, plus laborer, our facility mechanic, maintenance mechanic, and 2 laborers. And again, you see that costs on these individuals are shared because they do work in other locations, so we share the cost with the sewer, parking as appropriate. We are anticipating a slight decrease in overtime, but again, that may change when we have the contracts settled. The cost of the alarm systems is up some. And did we switch to a new provider? Was that?
Yeah, we got an increase in our fire alarm monitoring. and our maintenance on our fire alarms. Two different companies increased their unit prices per year annual contract.
Minor dollar increase in telecommunications. That is actually Cablevision that goes to the real cost increase was the Cablevision going to the paramedic station when we had them shut off for like a year and a half. When we brought them back on, the cost was higher than it had been. But it's, you know, it's part of the, they need to be able to connect to the internet to do their reporting. Small increase in water. Sewer, our own sewer fund is going to charge us more for sewer disposal. And again, heating fuel is up slightly because of the demand charges. Operating supplies, we're seeing a $3,000 impact from additional cleaning supplies needed related to COVID. And that is the, that's really what's driving the increase in that account. And then the last cost center here is parking. This is the town owned lots. This is the enforcement activity related to those and the maintenance activity for those lots. So you see no change in the salary, slight decrease in overtime because we haven't seen the need for it based on our actual. And slight decrease in professional services, and that's related to credit card fees. You know, this one's a bit of a swag at this point because you can't really tell in this year since people aren't, we're not seeing the volume of parking we normally see. When parking ticks back up again, I think this budget should be sufficient to cover the fees. But right now it's really just an estimate. We can't really look at past history because of we're assuming that several months will still be nearly vacant lots. I did, it was in my budget, the revenue associated with this, but I did go back and analyze revenue from prior years, and assuming I made an assumption that parking would resume at more normal levels by January, and so the ticketing would resume. So if you went back to the town administrator budget, you would see that revenue item has increased. I recalculated that.
You're talking about January of 22.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So question, Jamie, would you like to go through the sewer and parking operating funds or do the public works capital first?
Well, let's finish with the operating funds, please.
Okay. Okay. Sewer administration. And remember, you know, the sewer fund is self-supporting. It does not draw on the taxes. So full-time salary in administration, that is a portion of it. It is one full admin and then a portion of ed, a portion of facility supervisor, engineering aide, assistant director. We have a decrease in professional services. That's legal fees. You see the big number here in 2019-20 and some carryover additionally into 2021. That was Save the Sound. Minor increase in billing and collection services, but otherwise this budget is generally very stable. And go to general overhead. The sewer fund. Here we go. Okay. The sewer fund pays for its own insurance. So in addition to liability and property, it does have to pay for flood insurance. We have seen a significant increase in the flood insurance premium for the pump stations that are in flood zones. And that's why the increase there. Then you see all the employee benefits. Those are based on the same assumptions we made for the town hall. Pension fund is allocated to the sewer fund. Workers' comp, I will tell you actually on the insurance premiums and on workers' comp, we will be recalculating those numbers. We were notified today that our workers' comp premium will not only, we had anticipated, I think we had it in as flat, and we're getting a 5% decrease. So there will be some bump for wages, but the rate will be decreased, and we're going to be flat on our liability insurances.
Is that experience related?
Workers' comp is experience related, yes. Self-insured retention, this is something we've kept here in the budget in case we have items come up where we have uninsured claims. And when I say uninsured, it's really more, we have to pay the deductible if we have a sewer issue that impacts a resident or a business. You can see here we've set aside funding for the wage increases to the non-reps that are paid out of this fund, as well as for the contract settlement. This transfer to other funds is going into the sewer cap. Wait a second, maybe make right. A small portion of that goes to the general fund for sewer debt service, and the balance is going to the sewer capital fund for projects that will be coming up. Okay. This is maintenance of the pump houses and the pipes. So we have 3 full-time employees dedicated to sewer, and then you see a percentage of some of the other employees from the Public Works Department that do work for the sewer fund. Repairs are down. That's a good thing. Ed, I'm not sure I know why the cost of facility maintenance is down.
Because we've treated 5 of our pump stations to new sewer pumps, transfer switches, and controls through some capital improvements. So I was able to remove some funds from that line item.
Okay. And we have some other costs down, just simply looking at historic that we were able to reduce them, look based on historic actuals. We do have an increase in operating supplies. And is that the generator fuel?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And the last, the biggest line.
Save the best for last, did you?
Yeah. I'll let Ed talk about that one.
Thank you. This is always the most difficult one for me to project. This is the payment to the Stanford WPCA to treat the raw sewage that comes from the town of Darien. I did have this year some early numbers, some really good news that came by way of our invoice that we normally get in the end of October, November, we were able to meet with the city of Stamford virtually and rectify that invoice, which means we go through it. I go through it line by line, and then any questions I have, they answer. So this was this number I'm putting forward right now seems to be a very stable number with regards to payments to the city of Stamford, where you see previous years were up a little bit or much higher, if you will, due to circumstances beyond our control of some of the improvements they were making, as well as I&I issues that we're having on our side of the system.
So Ed, how do you see the work that we're planning to do on our system impacting this going forward?
Well, I hope to see a reduction. It was anticipated that we'd be paying somewhere close to 15.75% of the operating budget for the sewage treatment plant. The numbers actually came back closer to 13.9, which was a big improvement for us. I'm looking to go down as low as our contract will allow, which is a 12% floor at this point in our current contract, which gets renewed in another 3.5 years. But we cannot go below that. So we have a target of hitting 12 with some of the major improvements that we want to do with our sewer system to reduce the inflow and infiltration, which is basically sending clean water to the city of Stamford to be treated. So we are actively pursuing the grant now with the DEEP to finalize our investigation to come up with some capital improvements. We targeted in the Brookside, Leroy, Birch area of town, where we found that we have the most issues with infiltration of groundwater and storm water into our system. So we're looking forward to scheduling those improvements, hopefully sometime the end of this year. Thus, shooting for that 12% eventually over the next 2 years to try to get us down to that floor.
Krista? You're on mute, Krista.
Not going. Thank you. That's great, Ed. As far as the amount paid to Stamford, then, is that an annual with that 12% base? Is that an annual basis, or if we make improvements, could that be adjusted downward as we decrease the amount we're sending?
The only way we can, you're talking about the 12% number as a floor?
Correct. I just want to know, do we pay them in installments as we build back, or is it an annual bill they send us?
We make a monthly payment based on my budgetary number. After 6 months, I usually get an invoice from them and we'll review it. If my payments are too high, I adjust that number down. If my payments are too low, I adjust the number up. But it's a monthly payment. We make 12 payments a year. We rectify the following year. So we have actually looking back in time to see what they actually spent. And then we make the adjustment moving forward next year. So almost jumping ahead with our payments. And then we get past the fiscal year, we rectify, we see if I pay too much again, or if I've not paid enough, and we carry that over into the next year.
Ed, you're breaking up.
Okay, I think I've I'm just, that's great that it's reconciled. At least it seems like every 6 months. So any improvements we can make are recognized in the overall payment scheme.
Right, but Krista, if our flow went below 12%, we would have to renegotiate to be able to get down below that.
Okay, independent of the 12%, acknowledging 12% is the floor, but with the improvements Ed is planning, that we're not locked in at a rate for a year per se.
No, that rate is basically, it's just a straight calculation of the overall treatment the city of Stamford does with our our number divided by the total treatment. So it gives us what percentage we're sending over there. It's a straight calculation, and that number varies by, like I said, I&I or what our use is. So it does vary. I am hoping to get below 12. And I'm
Oh.
hoping our next negotiation allows me to knock it, and I did knock it from 12.5 to 12. I'm looking to maybe get it down to 11 next time.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
Keep an open mind.
Okay. Any other questions, Sarah?
I just wanted to say I'm so glad the INI is making a difference. It's a huge dollar amount associated with it. So thank you very much for all your work, Ed, and your team.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to quick go to the sewer capital just because it's pretty brief. What we're looking to do in sewer capital this year is we're going to be jetting, cleaning out the sewer lines, TVing them. We'll continue with root control and replacing pumps. Okay. Let's go to parking. Parking lot administration. So we have 75% of the town hall receptionist is paid out of the parking fund. She manages the permit process, the ticketing, the wait list, all the questions. Professional services, that's our software for the permitting. It's also training for the crew on the Metro North platform training. There's really not a lot of change here. Software support has to do with the pay stations and the license plate reader. And then the insurance that's carried by the for the properties. Parking operations. This is the rangers. As I said in my presentation on Monday, this budget basically, one of the rangers is charged 50% to the general fund and 50% here. The other rangers charged 100% here. This budget recognizes that we're going to, based on activity, we are going to need to, how do I put it, eliminate that position for at least the first 6 months of the year. I do expect that that will happen through a vacancy, that it won't be actually laying somebody off, that we'll be able to do it through attrition. And then you see where we have some of the other employees in Public Works that are charged a percentage here based on the amount of work they do for the parking fund. Slight decrease in professional services. Again, this is credit cards. This is, we've taken a bit of a haircut, assuming that parking will pick back up and we'll have some cost there, but it's really just an estimate. We do have an increase in the cost of the telecommunications. That is for the elevators and for a surveillance system, and then a phone for the parking ranger.
Can I just ask about the elevators? Ed, what is the status of operation on those elevators? Are they operational currently?
The New York bound side is operational. The New Haven bound side has been out of service for about a month and a half. The parts we had to make improvements and repairs again, somewhere around $28,000. The parts are coming from overseas to be replaced. They're supposed to be here in about 4 to 6 weeks.
So when an elevator goes down and is out of service, which they seem to be all the time, hence why they're being replaced in the new platform project, Can we get a credit back on the telecommunications? You know, maybe it's a small amount of money, but you know, it seems we shouldn't be paying for a service that's inaccessible to the public.
That's interesting. We can see.
Okay.
You know, so water and sewer use are down because water and sewer use are down. Transfer to other funds is, you know, we're obligated as part of our lease with the state to keep the result of operations and use them for improvements to the parking station or parking lots. So this is a transfer to the parking capital fund. We had significantly increased it last year because we wanted to do some specific work. This year it's back down to the more normal level. Basically, it's a plug. So that's the assumed profit between revenue and our expenditures.
Kate, would this be the right time to talk about the Darien Station shelters? Would that be impacted in that line?
Nope.
Okay.
We'll
get there?
We'll get there. Yeah, in a minute. Last section there is employee benefits. Again, same basis as the other funds. Looking at the cost of medical, dental for the employees there. Contract set asides, pension contribution. So we'll head over to parking capital. And this would be where the projects planned for next year. The only specified project is to purchase an enclosed snow blower. And actually, do we have? Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm picking the right one. Yeah, there we go. So I really want to see this thing. Ed, you want to talk about your snowblower?
Sure. This is because of the amount of work that we do around the stations and the parking areas, especially with the sidewalks. We're generally getting to these areas last, which means the platform crews who are generally called out first are generally the last ones to wrap up and go home. And sometimes that's hours after everybody's done plowing the streets and are out of town and on their way home or home already. So what we're talking about doing is we have regular snow blowers. They just aren't seem to give me the efficiency that we're looking for to take care of a 4 or 5 foot wide sidewalk with one pass. I had Brian do a little bit of investigative work, track down some equipment that maybe would help us out and benefit those guys out there in the on the platforms. But we have quite a bit of sidewalk work to do after we're done with the platforms. And generally speaking, we've done the most damage by plowing the snow up onto the sidewalk for these guys to remove. So we thought this would be a better approach. We did have an older one that we tried to use. We did use it for a couple of years. It was beneficial, but it unfortunately didn't last as long as we'd like it to. It was about 25 years old, so we are looking to replace that now. We did a little bit of investigative work. We're down in New Jersey to look at some equipment. This is the price point we came back at. I told them I wanted to stay reasonably priced. This is something that'll give us a benefit, cut down on some overtime, and yeah, provide these guys a shorter time period out there. It is hard work trying to move that stuff around at the end of the storm when it's frozen, after it's mixed with the salt. So I think this could be a big benefit for the town and for the guys.
So there aren't any other projects specifically identified in this fund, although we have additional funding going in there, which could be used towards your shelters.
Great. So let's talk about that a little bit. As you know, the Connecticut DOT is working on a project to replace the platforms at the Darien train station. And we have asked for consideration on extending the canopies at the Darien station. And that is a very expensive proposition. So DOT suggested that we look at an alternative, which would be to install some of those, they look like bus shelters. You've seen them. There's one on the New Haven bound side at the Norotan Heights train station. So Ed and I went on a field trip and had a meeting with CONDOT yesterday. They're very receptive to the town of Darien installing possibly 3 of those shelters along the New York bound side of the Darien station and 1 on the New Haven bound side. They would construct bump outs so that the shelters wouldn't sit on the platforms as they exist today. I feel strongly that it's a safety concern for me that the shelter, that there's enough room for the commuters to navigate properly on the platforms. So, you know, it would be a great partnership with DOT for them to do the reconstruction, put in the foundations for these shelter bump outs. And we as a town from this parking capital fund would source and purchase the shelters that they would then install as part of the improvement project at the station. So I'd like to give some consideration to adding some money to this parking capital budget in anticipation of being able to fund the 4 shelters at the Darien train station. And I'll let Ed talk a little bit more about it, maybe give us some ideas on what we should plug in as a number.
And Jamie, I think you hit a lot of the high points. The best part of that whole conversation was our meeting with the DOT and how receptive they were. And I think they were appreciative that we were coming to the table with some funds to help pay for some of it too. And I think that goes a long way. Not a lot of towns will do that with them. So for them to stop at 60% design and hopefully implement these things in their design and have their contractor install them, their only requirement for us would be to purchase them. And I thought that was a fair exchange. It's something that it keeps their project moving along, keeps their project consistent with one contractor on site. We're not a town contractor versus a DOT. So I thought that was a good exchange, a good fair exchange of services. We are waiting to hear back from their project manager, hopefully tomorrow or Friday, where he and I can talk about location and size, which is important. I'm trying to get a hold of their architect that's working on that project so that we can pick a style, I believe is a good way to put it, of this shelter. So it goes with the Darien station, the existing canopies, and their new railing system that they're putting in that's supposed to look almost like what's out there right now. So I want it to be cohesive. I want there to be some design that it flows. I'll be the first one to tell you I'm horrible at doing that. But I will get us an architect that happened to design the Norotan Heights station is the same architect that's working on the Darien station. And I feel very good that he's going to help us out and give us a little guidance too. The number now that we're looking at, I got some prices from online services. I got some prices from the station at Norotan Heights. We feel for these 4 locations that at $25,000 a piece, I think that would be a fair number to put as a placeholder, about $100,000 for these 4 locations on the Darien, at the Darien station on their platform for these shelters.
And I think it's a very appropriate expenditure from the, you know, parking capital fund. It's important to take the commuter revenue and reinvest it in these facilities. And I think it would be very well received by the commuting public to have these shelters in place. So I'd love to entertain any questions from the board about that. Yes, Sarah.
Theoretically, I think this is a fantastic idea. I was just curious about timing. Would this happen within the next couple of years? After I listened to the initial Condat presentation, it seemed to be a few years out.
The schedule that that I heard at our 60% meeting is they are going to notice to award sometime this time next year, with the hopes of starting 2022 in April with the construction. So they're trying to wrap up final design by, I believe it was September, Jamie, I think is what we heard yesterday.
Yes.
So that they can get this package ready to bid and get a bidder over the winter time. Notice of award January, February, start in April of 2022. It's a 2-year project they're anticipating.
All right, so we should outlay the funds in the next year. Okay.
Correct. You should usually be putting the funds in
Right.
for the next fiscal year. Yes, correct.
Put aside. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Krista.
No, I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm glad to hear they were very receptive. As I understand, they're at 60% design. I just wanted to ensure that they weren't considering reducing the scope of the canopy because we're being so generous with adding these shelters. I just want to make sure they don't change their design and expect us to buy more bust shelters.
There was no consideration in the new design for them to be adding any additional canopies. So what you see there today is what's going to be there tomorrow.
Okay.
So this is the way that we can get some additional sheltering for the commuters.
And they're committed to the scope that is currently there.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
That they're not going to change their designs based upon our ability to pay for shelters.
The only way they're going to change their design is to change the design of the platform to include the bump outs to accommodate the shelters that we plan to provide.
Okay.
Ed, that's correct, Ed. You didn't hear them talk about any additional modifications or reductions in scope based on our request, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with the board's permission, I would like to, for now, add in an additional capital project expenditure from the parking capital fund of $100,000 for the Darien Station, Darien Station shelters. Yes, Sarah.
You're looking for a motion or
You
just to
don't need
add it
one.
right now? Okay.
Yeah, we'll vote on it when we get to the point of adds and cuts and things.
Last but certainly not least, capital. So this is an area where, remember the Board of Finance has asked us to change the vehicle replacement reserve funding method. So items under $100,000, I'm sorry, I'm going to say that wrong. Jen, items over $50,000 have to have their own account?
No, you're correct. Under $100,000 do not get reserved.
Okay, they do not get reserved. So one item, so you see here the truck with the plow, the truck replacement, those do not get reserved. They are treated one at a time. Items over $100,000, they get part of the reserve and the cost is split up over their useful life and funded in that way. So you see we need to fund $164,000 this year for the long-term larger items, 95 to replace an F550, $80,000 to replace another F550. On top of that, this is a project Ed listed as a priority 3, but it's been put off for a number of years. Paving the front parking lot at Town Hall. That's the one down below by the Mather Center. Again, a small capital line. Sidewalk rehab, we'll get to that a little bit later. Tree replacement throughout town. Paving, we'll go look at more details. The gymnasium upgrade, these are the windows to finish the project that we've begun, replacing the windows in the Town Hall gymnasium. Replacing the exterior doors, we can go into greater detail, but these are the gym doors when you go over the bridge to the gym. These are the outside doors. We will be putting in a handicap door and better doors. And then landscaping, if you think about the entrance to the Mather Center lot and those shrubs that are there, they're overgrown. They were never well maintained. They are not only unattractive, but they're a site hazard. So this would be to rip them out and replace them with more appropriate, more attractive landscaping. So we can go down, look at them individually. I'm gonna, let Ed talk about the trucks because that's his thing, not mine.
Sorry. Yeah, these are our low boy dump trucks. What we're doing, if you see the two different prices, we replaced the low boy about 2 years ago with what is called a hook truck. Allows you to detach the backside of the truck and change it over to different types of equipment, whether it be a salter sander, a box truck addition for wood chipping. We did build a dumpster or open body for the back of it. We also have a flat section we can do for towing if we had to load things on top. So basically this truck removes these attachments on the back like you would a dumpster. And this has been very helpful for what we're doing. In the wintertime, it plows snow. It comes with a plow attachment. So it is a little bit more expensive because we're going to build some of, and I say build, we're actually weld and build these bodies together. So we're saving money by doing that in-house. And I will tell you, any truck that we replace, Brian personally goes up, this is Brian Fransforth, our head mechanic, goes up to the factories and picks out the units that he wants, brings them back and puts them together himself, saving us $10,000 to $15,000 easily on each vehicle. Then we do have to outfit it with lights. He does do any painting on it that needs to be done, any sticker attachments, things like that. But we do try to do as much work in-house as we can. But this one here, the first F550 at $95,000 is the hook truck. The second one at $80,000 is just a standard lowboy truck with a stainless steel body, salter for the back, plow for the front.
Okay, then we have the pavement. Like I said, this has been put off for several years. I do think it's time. We want to reduce our liability there with the paving that's not in good condition. It's used by both employees and by our seniors quite a bit. So I think it's time to do it. I put that one forward.
That is the last section of all the town hall parking. We did save it because of the dredging project. We did put it off because of that.
Sorry, sidewalk rehab throughout town. Are there specific areas that we are looking at?
We are. We did start putting together a program for some large replacements to go along with some major repairs also. I do have basically set up right now a three and a half year program. I'm still looking for other areas. I wanted to target middle school and Tokenie School, so we're going to wrap up those areas first. We do and have a bid that's going to go out the beginning of next week for what I would call sidewalk repair and rehab. They're smaller sections. They're probably we're going to want them to target the downtown area, the streetscape sidewalks themselves, removing trees where we have to, replacing the bricking where it needs it, possibly putting more trees back in, but the proper trees, not the ones that are going to overgrow their area. And we're going to start down in the Sedgwick area, move our way towards town. We feel that area is done. So whatever money that we get for this sidewalk rehabilitation account, we're setting aside money to do that type of work, as well as larger, long block replacements that are 1,000, 2,000 feet long.
So Ed, these are all sidewalks made out of concrete, is that correct?
The only one that's not concrete, Jamie, that is on my list right now is Leroy, from West Avenue all the way up to Middlesex, which it's asphalt right now. But that is targeted for not next year, but the year after.
So the reason why I ask that is, and Jen and Kate can weigh in here. For me, it makes a difference on whether it's something that we should be bonding or not, what material it's made out of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a concrete sidewalk has a longer useful life than an asphalt sidewalk. Is that correct or incorrect?
That's a fair statement, but they both exceed the 20-year limit. Probably asphalt would probably get you closer to 30, concrete closer to 40. But it really does depend on workman's quality, type of concrete, things like that. So roughly speaking, those numbers are what we use for a guide.
Okay. So would you, Kate and Jen, would you consider this a candidate for bonding?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily a fan of, I guess I'd want to look at the whole plan. And, if we have a plan to, over the next, say, 5 years, do every sidewalk in town and then be done. I get concerned when we start bonding for things that get done on a regular basis. Like if we were to bond for paving, which happens every year, I think it becomes a crutch for financing.
So you and I have talked about this often, Kate. I look at it slightly different. While the function is done every year, the particular sidewalks here that are being rehabilitated, you're only going to touch those sidewalks once every 20 or 30 years. So that's how I look at it. I look at it as one capital construction project, even though we do more sidewalks every year. Yes, that's true.
And Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point a few years out, this level of effort goes down, correct? Because I think in the 6th year of your out years, you're down to $150,000.
Yes, and that's shown on it's shown on the plan right there.
Yeah, 26, 27.
Yeah, and that's based on our high level inspections of the sidewalks that we did about a year and a half ago, to give us kind of a ballpark of where our funding needed to be for the sidewalk rehabilitation. The key part of that is I can't do $3.5 million of work in a year. You don't have the time. The inspection service, you want to make sure you're watching your contractor. I'd like to stick with one contractor, a nice low bid. Those are all the things that play into, I can do $500,000, $750,000. I can probably manage that too. But once you get above that number, it's very, very hard to provide the services needed to make sure your contractor is giving you the quality work that you want out there, and he's doing it the correct way that you want it done, because you need to have eyes on him all the time. And Mother Nature plays another role in it. You know, we can't lay concrete or asphalt 12 months a year. We can barely get 7.5, which is a good gauge. So I kind of run those numbers, and $500,000 to 750 was my guide. Anything above that, I don't think I'd be spending it appropriately, or I wouldn't be able to spend it at all.
So I do think that there's an opportunity here that we can bond these higher dollar years where there's a significant effort being put in on the rehab program. But then I think once you're at a point where it's a more routine, lower level effort, we wouldn't bond $150,000. We'd go back to having that in the annual budget. I think that this is significant enough, and with the useful life of 30 to 40 years, and with it not always being at this level of effort, I think bonding is an option.
Thank you. We'll continue to have that conversation, I'm sure. Krista.
I just want to clarify though, going back, so this capital project request summary at 750,000 is purely for existing sidewalks, correct?
Yes, this is just for existing sidewalks.
Okay, where do we see money for, or what are we doing about new sidewalks? I think of the Mansfield Avenue thought.
The money for the new sidewalks for Mansfield was already asked or appropriated. It was back in 20 or 21. That money's there. It's a matter of getting approvals, getting easements, getting a DOT to allow us to do what we want to do up there. But yeah, I had requested that money back when it first came up.
Okay, so is there a schedule of the new sidewalks and your thoughts for new sidewalks, independent of your plan for the rehabilitation of existing?
We do have two outstanding ones. One of them is Mansfield, a little bit more difficult to get approvals for and put in. But the other one that I really want to start to do is Edgerton. We have a design done. We do have to present it to the public. We were ready to do that back in February of last year. Unfortunately, we ran into a situation where we can't get groups of people together for a public meeting. And we seem to have kind of overcome that a little bit, but that's a significant sidewalk improvement in a neighborhood that's going to require bringing the neighbors in to give them a full picture of what we propose to do out there before we break ground. But those are the two that I have on my slate right now.
Is there a long-term plan, a rollout plan of areas of town you've identified? Because sidewalks seem to be always a constant source of discussion in the community. Is there a plan for how you would like to see this roll out, given you obviously working with the community and weather and all that, and then funding, but is there a plan as to where we would see the sidewalks over 5 years, 10 years?
I don't have a plan that aggressively puts in new sidewalks throughout the town of Darien. I do react to a lot of the requests. We evaluate. We do have a matrix that I go through to look at requests for new sidewalks. But we've had, the Mansfield was one of them. There was another one that went from Middlesex north past Oxridge, and Edgerton was another one that was asked. So those are the three that come to mind, but I don't have an aggressive, let's say, 5-year plan to put new sidewalks throughout town. No, I do not have that.
Okay.
Certainly, we have discussed different sidewalks at varying points over the last couple of years. We've discussed quite a bit sidewalk from Darien through New Canaan to the Talmadge Hill train station on Hoyt Street. That has its own challenges because we can't build a sidewalk in New Canaan. And we recently got a request for looking at a sidewalk down Mansfield Avenue to reach Oxridge Elementary School. So the first thing that Ed does is runs those through the matrix, to see where they come out in terms of viability and priority and numbers of people served, and on a state road or a local road, a variety of different things. And if the Board of Selectmen would like to have a general overview or reminder of what that process is, we can certainly arrange for that.
Okay, that would be great. Clearly, they cannot sidewalks can't exist just because people want them there. I can appreciate there's many factors that go into it, but just so we have an understanding as to those areas that you've identified it. So that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sarah, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to add on, and I agree with Krista, and I would echo those thoughts. I think everyone's always very interested in where the next sidewalk's going to be put in. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
I have a great desire to someday see improvements made to the sidewalks adjacent to the commercial businesses on Tokenique Road. I know that that's been discussed often. There's a number of different property owners there, which makes that difficult. It probably falls into a model block or modified model block situation. Would love to see the town participate in that. It's in dire need of improvement, so I'd like to have some consideration given to trying to move that forward at some point in the not so distant future.
Next up is $5,000 for tree replacement throughout town. Then we have the paving program, $1.2 million. And I believe this gets us about 6 miles of road. Correct, Ed?
6.3.
Do you have specific roads that are planned for this?
Yes.
Are you going to tell us what they are?
Only if I have to.
Okay, don't tell us.
Because I at a public meeting, and when I do mention a road, and for whatever reason, we go out and we finally reevaluate it, and it gets taken off the list. I do get a phone call or two. So I do try to keep it, kind of close to the vest until I evaluate them properly. But I do have a sense of the roads that need it based on the 20-year schedule. We are still working with the utility companies as we have over the last 5 years to piggyback on their work, get them to contribute toward the paving, where we when we do a final roadway, we're not digging up a 2-year-old road. We're digging up an 18-year-old road, and they make a contribution. We balance the difference, and we pave the entire roadway. And I think it's worked out very well, in my opinion. And we're going to continue to do that. The water company has been a great partner. The gas company is they're doing better, and hopefully after this year we will catch up with all the gas company work. But the water company has a lot of improvements they're going to be doing. So I see them still being here for the next at least 4 or 5 years. So I want to catch up now with our roadway work. That with this small increase or this increase I've asked for this year, next year I can actually go back down to where I was on a regular basis per mile, and do about 4 miles a year, which is what we shoot for. 80 miles of total roadway, 20-year cycle, 4 miles a year will get me that. So I'd like to get back on track in this fall.
Okay, next up is the town hall gym upgrades. This is the glass window replacement. We have rotted sills. We have glass needs to be tinted to prevent reduce the heat in the gym. Would be insulated to save against heat loss in the winter. And I believe this is the last piece of it, Ed?
No, we have
1 more year?
There's going to be 2 more. There's 4 sections of glass basically in that large gym. Each triangle piece at each end of the basketball court, if you will, and then large sections of glass along the small gym.
Okay.
each side, which are leaking. So we're going to go after the worst one first. It's the section that overhangs the entrance to the Mather Center. That bid, I just finished reviewing it last week with Tony. We're gonna get it out on the street now and see if we can get some prices back. We did get some good estimates to help me with this budgetary number. Hopefully they come in. It's a lot of work. It's going to be different. We're going to have to shut that gym down for a little while to do this work, but I think it's needed. It's a long time coming. Those the sills up there were rotted when we did our inspection last year, and
Yeah.
make sure we take care of it as quickly as we can.
I think it's important both for safety reasons and for energy efficiency.
I agree, and this year's 75. We have last year's approved 75. Will give us both ends. What I may do next year's capital request, Kate, I may combine the next 250 and make it 100. If I have a good company that's working and we could get that bid out, I think it may be beneficial to put them both in at the same time. But we'll see how we do with the first section.
Okay, then as I mentioned, the doors, when you come over the bridge to the gym, we want to replace those doors with energy efficient doors and put a handicap accessible door in there. Currently, we don't have that. And so we'd be both complying with ADA regulations, and this would make us, right now, you cannot get through a handicap accessible door and get to the fire marshal's office or the gym area. So I think it's important that we do this.
And these are the same doors that are in the front entrance to the building. They'll be identical.
And then last, as I said, that entrance to the lower lot, aside from the bushes being unsightly, I think they're dangerous, especially as we have a senior population coming out that entranceway. Remove the overgrown bushes and replace them with more attractive, but improve the sight line there to avoid accidents.
Can I just ask a question? Not that I'm against landscaping of any kind, but wouldn't it be easier to just install grass there, easier for maintenance and whatnot? Is there a reason why we have to put bushes back in there? I see Ed nodding his head and I see Kate laughing, so there must be a story here.
Jamie, I'm an engineer. You give me a choice between grass and asphalt, I may asphalt that out there. There's no rhyme or reason. I do believe that the front entrance area along Renshaw Road to the town hall, to our town hall, should be presentable. And I think there's opportunities to do that. And I think that corner right there, now overgrown and let go the way it has, can be made into something that's a little better presentable and something that we can maintain. The beautification committee have been nothing but fantastic in the front area, the slope down to that by the walk or stairs down to the Mather Center. You've seen some of their work. They're anxious to get after this corner too. So I see it turning into something a whole lot better looking, and something that I think that the town hall entrances deserve to look like.
Well, I appreciate that, and all of those, I think they're juniper bushes maybe that have been here for a long time. Time to replace them, but I actually happen to think that the area along the waterway there is quite attractive. So not necessarily looking to block that with a whole bunch of new bushes. I think it's really nice the way it is. So
I think we may have some objections from neighbors if we don't replace the bushes. So I leave it up to those of you who would get the phone calls.
So they're looking to block any cars that are parked there? Is that the objective?
I believe so.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? This has been a lot.
We have questions on Public Works Capital. Nope.
If you have any that come to you after, send them on to me or to Ed, and you can address them on the second. I would just real quick before you all leave, when you're looking at OpenGov, over here on the side above budgets, you see reports. Go in and take a look. There's some good charts in there. One of them is the budget as it's proposed. It's it's showing as a stacked bar, so you have the history. This is what the department requests were. This is where the proposal stands, and you can see how it's broken down into major categories. So it's a good place where you could go and go to general government, drill down, see what makes up general government. You could change it to a stacked graph, a percentage graph. Go in and take a look around. Different ways to view our budget and see how things work.
Thanks.
All right.
Any other questions or comments for this evening?
So may I just clarify then for Monday evening, what is our objective?
Monday evening, you've got fire, all the fire
Okay.
departments, emergency services, and then we'll we'll talk about employee benefits and risk management as well.
So it's really finishing up all of the cost centers that we haven't yet reviewed. And then on Tuesday, we flip into deliberations and reviewing the capital budget, re-reviewing the capital budget. So Monday night, February 1st, 7 p.m., not 5:30. We'll look forward to seeing everyone then.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everybody.